This is Papa Smurf. You're listening to Our Lifestyle, the podcast, with ODB and the Mayor.
Yo, this is Rob Maggi, and you're listening to Our Lifestyle podcast.
Yo, as we get started, we want to thank our title sponsor, Scrapin' the Coast. You can visit scrapinthecoast.com for more information. Their next event, 22nd annual, is going to be the last weekend in June. They haven't yet announced it for 2024, but rest assured we will be out there. One of the biggest, baddest shows in the country. Get ready for more information coming soon on Scrapin' the Coast. Tap on the hashtag #ScrapinTheCoast for more information. We appreciate the continued support of Custom Car Show Productions.
I just finished up, and I am heading home.
From the club?
Well, no, I was at the dog track today. The club was, I don't even know what day it is. What's the day today? Today's, Wednesday?
Dude, you dovetailed the Gallivant right from freaking weekend right into partying, like Thursday.
Well, yeah. Say Wednesday or Thursday?
Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday. Okay, yeah, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, Monday when we were at the club. Today we were at the dog track.
I love it, dude.
And we bet on lucky number 7, and lucky number 7 got us. And so we went and bought a whole bunch of scratchers. So now I'm actually on my way home to scratch all the scratchers.
Man.
I even got a free pack of Camel Joe's. So
Camel Joe's and Ms. or his O's.
Well, the best part about it is the Sig machine. The Camel Joe pack was like hanging right there on the very edge, and I just nudged it, boom, fell down, and I got me a free pack of Camel Joe's.
Dude, I love it, man.
And once I got that free pack of Camel Joe's, dude, all the hose came out of the woodworks.
Yeah.
Yep. So life is good, man. Life is good. I can't complain.
Yo, it's ODB from OLP, and we got Miggity Mike Murray in his house. Mike, is it going down? Did I hear you coughing over there?
Bro, I was coughing up. I just got done finishing my second Camel Joe out of the free pack of Camel Joe's that I got out of the Sig machine.
Dude, legendary, bro. Listen, we got to thank Scrapin' the Coast. Scrapin' the Coast, you heard at the top. Their next event is going to be next June. There's going to be more information coming. Scrapin' with an IN, thecoast.com. Join us in Biloxi. Mike, speaking of Biloxi, we are going to talk about Biloxi in a few minutes, but I think you cut out there a second. Were you talking about the free, sometimes, you get a free soda, you got a free pack, it sounded like.
Bro, I was at the casino, and, because I just got back from the freaking weekend, and man,
right.
What a great fucking weekend that was. And they had the Sig machine down in the casino. Bro, I walked over, nudged it a little bit, and
boom.
Dude, the free Camel Joe fell to the bottom.
Dude,
boom.
That's like hitting. Let's be honest, that's like hitting a lotto, man. That was like a ringer,
bro. It was like once in a lifetime. Never gotten my free pack of Camel Joe's before. And dude, once I started smoking up on that Camel Joe, all the hose were coming out of the woodworks, bro.
Hey, I grew up, my family loved playing some horseshoes. We got to see maybe, I know there's not a lot of dirt at Eastbound Get Down, but man.
Dude, we got to bring horseshoes back, bro.
I agree, dude, because I can get, some of you guys can take me out with the cornhole corn toss deal, but I'm telling you, man, I'll come at you with a leaner and a ringer on the horseshoe deals. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I believe it. I'm sure ODB is down with the horse shoes.
Yeah, the horseshoes, man. Again, Scrapin' the Coast, can't thank them enough for the continued support. Mike, on this episode, we got Dan G. I'm going to make sure I say his name correct a little bit later, but Dan G, old school Negative Camber member, built several trucks he's owned, and he, including the 10th anniversary, really we'll talk about, it was really a cover truck, Tulo Taco. So he's going to be on, and then Mike, what we're going to do is after that, we're going to run the audio. I'm going to call Ruben Arteaga, the Booka, because he remembers being on site that day when the shoot went down. And Mike, that just shows you, man, Ruben Arteaga, there is the 7 degrees of R.A. Ruben.
Bro, dude, the roots are so deep with the Booka. It is absolutely amazing. What hasn't this guy seen or done in this scene of ours?
Exactly, dude. He's been gallivanting with Hank for a couple weeks, and he said the few things he hadn't seen, now he has. Because, when you're with Hank, you kind of see it all.
Oh, dude. Well, you think, and sometimes you see what you think you see, but you really don't see it, That's
Dude.
just like I could have, dude, we were all hanging out at the pool party at the Harris for the freaking weekend, and we looked up in the casino, we looked up in the rooms, and in the window, I swear to God, it looked like Hank up there in the window, passed out in the fucking window, just looking down, watching us as we're down there in the pool, man.
Yeah, scoping out the landscape,
Oh yeah, he said he was going to be a judge of the bikini contest, but unfortunately they locked him in the room, so he just got the view from the room. That's all he got.
I like it. The overview of this episode brought to you by our family at Hammered Weekend Wear. Visit HAMMERD weekendwear.com. There's going to be more information coming for their t-shirt subscriptions and other subscriptions where you get all of the designs for 2024. But for now, they've got a new landing page on their website. They're doing some great things. They got the freestyle and OBS, the bride blazer, and so much more. Hammered Weekend Wear. Mike, the general updates before, I know when we get to the scene updates, we're going to talk a little bit about you and I. We got 3 tick marks in our OLP binders, if we're still updating those. But I want to say this. I kind of generally speaking, this past weekend when I gallivanted down south, I stayed with the big homie Tom Bennett and his family, so I can't thank him enough. But on the way home that Sunday afternoon, I had to kind of listen to my pack take a come from behind loss from ATL, and of course Kirk, the big homie, now Orlando Lakey, and he's got to rub it in via text that them Hawks, what are they called? The Falcons. The Falcons,
Falcons.
They come from behind, so it kind of sucked, man, because the first game Jordan Love was looking pretty good. Now they're 1-1, they're still tied for the division lead, but we'll have to see how good the season's going to be, man.
Well, all I know is DJ Mays made it very, very clear that when any of his favorite podcasts start talking football, he just pushes that fast forward button. So we totally lose DJ Mays when we start talking football.
Well, he won't hear us, talk about how awesome the Twitch is. And, we would suggest that everyone downloads Twitch and then just search like DJ Mays Radio, because the sets that he's doing are pretty good, but he won't hear any of that.
Yeah, no, he won't hear none of that. But guys, make sure you're tuning in and checking out and listening, and just, you don't want to miss our boy DJ Mays.
It's free.
DJ Mays Radio. It's fucking free and it's awesome.
Yeah, it is. The other update I wanted to mention is iOS 17 is out, and for the first time in years, I wasn't even really, I don't want to say not excited, but I kind of followed some of the updates. But if you've got an iPhone that's supporting the latest update, go ahead and update it. Mike, I'm going to have to show you, how to do, you can do the custom stickers now. I'm going to, I've got some stickers ready to kind of flip over to you, kind of EBGD stickers that you can send in text, because you like what's it called? EBGD?
Yeah, you got your own name for it, but it's called Eastbound Get Down, and it's happening January 12th through the 14th. Okay. You might want to keep that in mind, OD, because you've already pre-registered for it. You're going to be parked up underneath the pavilion, and you might even be bringing out a surprise.
I don't know
for sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know for sure, but I think it'd be pretty cool if there was these 2 legendary mini trucks parked next to each other under the pavilion at Eastbound Get Down, January 12th through the 14th. Pre-registration is open for vehicles, for vendors, sponsorships, whatever you need. Hit us up at eastboundgetdownshow.com.
Dude, wait till you see the Mazda. I got so many points coming at you. I want to know who's judging my truck at this show, dude, because I'm gonna be standing up there trying. You know what I mean? I want to get
You know them all really well. Our boy Rob Seeley is one of the judges. Another one of our guys, Mr. Boone, is one of the judges. And can't forget our boy Dizzy. Dizzy is another one of our
Dizzy
judges.
Davis, the guy that's doing all the artwork, little social media deals. You got to hit him up through social media to get those, right?
Dizzy Designs, baby.
That's good stuff, man. Well, the guys, if you haven't updated to iOS 17, check out some of the stickers. There's some more cool things you can do. I'll probably talk about them more next episode. But the general update's brought to you by Lone Star Throwdown. Every year it's going down in Conroe, Texas. Ain't that right, Mike? Lone Star Throwdown.com. Mike, you know, they always try to say, hey, but it's sold out. I go, no. You gallivant right through the front. You don't even bring a ride. You don't need to, man. There's so much stuff there, Mike. Let's be honest. Like, if any of us brought a ride there, we're not going to even do very well because all the best rides in the dang country are there, right? So I just want to go there and spectate and just watch in awe of the awesomeness, LoneStarThrowdown.com. Ain't that right, Mike?
Well, hey, when you are there, make sure you stop by the OLP booth and pick up some of our merch because we definitely appreciate those that support OLP.
Yeah, because if last year, you know, we were coasting, dude, what you had told me that you basically, the truck was sputtering out in Naples, and you pretty much just barely got home. So, you know, our goal is if we can just make enough to put a little fuel in the vehicle, we're happy. You know what I'm saying? Sputtering out.
Oh, yeah.
So, Mike, I got one question for you as we move through this episode. Are you ready?
Now it's time to get serious.
Man, I am always ready to get that answer wrong.
Dude, this one's going to be an easy/hard because you got a 2-pointer option here. You can get 1 point or you can get 2 points. It's that simple, and it's an easy question. I know one of these you're going to get. If you don't, then you're really slipping. But all you have to do is think of Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon. Remember the old school kind of awesome network that some of us had? My parents had cable. I don't know how in Land O'Lakes. But name 1 or 2 shows on Nickelodeon that featured slime of some sort.
Well, I do remember Double Dare.
Boom, ding, 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 right? Because for those that may be new listeners, you actually were picked to be on Double Dare one time.
Yes, I was actually, and that happened at Universal Studios here in Orlando, and it was pretty fucking awesome.
So awesome.
But do you remember the rest of that story?
Something about the power.
The power went out, and we had to be evacuated out of the building. So I never got to go on.
Insane in the membrane. Dude, I loved that show. As a kid, I loved watching till the end because I loved the last little obstacle course, but I also loved like all the stuff they gave away. I was like, man, they're getting trips. They're getting like the new Nintendos. I mean, dude, I was just, I was glued to it. So that's one. Now the other one's a little tougher. The other one, there was another show on there that some of the kinfolk out there, they're going to be slamming the dashboard. I mean, I know Joey Whitby. You know, he's probably out there slamming on the dashboard. There's one more that actually started in 79. It was a 5-season comedy, real dark, kind of weird comedy, different sketches that was on Nickelodeon. But do you happen to know? Because, I mean, you could get 2 points if you knew that one.
Well, check this out. Remember, they had Family Double Dare, and then they just had Double Dare, bro. So there's your 2 right there, dog.
Well, dude, you know what? I'm gonna give it to you, man, because sometimes I get typecasted as being kind of mean during this segment. So, Mike, you know what? I'm gonna throw you a bone and give you the 2 deals.
Well, hey, I appreciate that, but back in 1979, no, I do not know what that one was.
It was a weird show, and I watched it as a kid, like circa 84, 85. It was called You Can't Do That on television. And it was weird. If you guys look it up, some of you guys are going to remember it was a Canadian sketch comedy. It first aired locally, but then it ended up getting picked up, I think, by Nickelodeon. And it's kind of a weird show, but it's kind of late 70s, early 80s weirdness, I guess. But they had slime.
Yeah.
They would pour slime from above the camera shot, and then people would just get slime all over them.
Okay, well, I do not remember that show at all, so I was not going to get that one.
Trivia with Mike Murray is brought to you by The Spark Show every August in Sevierville, Tennessee. TheSparkShow.com just celebrated the 10th annual event. They were a prior OLP Show of the Year. check them out. Hopefully you guys can gallivant out. You know, if Phil Fowler saw the photos and said, yo, I'm adding that to my list in 2024, that's the only blessing you need to go, you know what? I think I need to plan to go out to it. thesparkshow.com.
Because I tell you what, Spark Show in 2023 definitely did not disappoint, man. If we had a fucking fabulous time in Sevierville, Tennessee, Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, Gatlinburg. It's all right there, and we had a freaking blast.
Oh, yeah. So, Mike, the next we got ODB or Mike Murray live and uncut, because, I mean, Mike's dropped some jewels on you guys, some gems. But this one just popped up in my feed today, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because it's a little bit it's nothing that, you know, necessarily was somebody from our scene, but I will say this, you know, we continue to see that message that Lone Star Throwdown had came up with, and they had blessed and basically allowed for all of these other shows to use that famous saying, you know. You know, there's a kid around this show that wants to grow up and kind of be like you, and we owe it to them, right, to, you know, to be the best that we can be. And I do know during the scene updates, we'll talk a little bit about some of the events that we went to last weekend. But basically, out of this picnic, there was, you know, some shenanigans. I know Lone Star, I think, in the past has dealt with a similar situation of someone kind of tearing up the show grounds. I think it was LST, but other shows have as well. And I would just tell people, you know, we got to respect the shows or people that are putting their neck out on the line to put together events, especially if it's a free event. And I know sometimes, Mike, we saw this before where someone can just place the blame and go, well, you know, it wasn't me in the truck. I wasn't driving. It's like, look, if your buddy or your homie or you do something, I've seen even people, Mike, we've heard it, we've seen it, people in our scene that have even done some, you know, we were all younger, right? A lot of us were. But just listen, man, don't go to an event and screw things up. Don't steal stuff. Don't steal awards. I mean, East Tennessee Showdown, one guy stole a Mustang award. We still can't find it. I know Josh Ellis is still looking for it, but I mean, seriously, like, Mike, at the end of the day, I know us talking about this right now, it's probably not going to change anything, but like, even if one of your friends screws something up at a show, give them hell, or tell your friend, hey, you owe these guys the money, or you need to man up. You know, you're 30, 40 years old causing this havoc. It's like, come on, man. You know what I'm saying, Mike?
Bro, I'm totally with you, and honestly, we really don't have to even, you know, because the scene itself is pretty much blackballed this guy and has really beat the point in to mercy. I would hope anybody in the future wouldn't be stupid enough to do anything else like this. But yeah, I totally agree. I can't believe a grown man still does this type of shit at anywhere, to be quite honest with you, and especially at a show or a meet or anywhere where vehicles are trying to come together, people are trying to come together, hang out, have a good time, and show off their cars.
Yeah, it's just insane. ODB or Miggity Mike the Mayor, live and uncut, is brought to you by Joey at Get Decked. Get Decked _VA on Instagram, or Joey Dilworth on Facebook. Mike, you know you're moving on up like George and Wheezy if you're Joey Dilworth, because we had Sean from Rad BMX Builds on in the past. He's the big homie. And he recently got a Get Decked award, or not an award, but, you know, a deck for his display for his man cave, his workshop, from Joey Dilworth. So Joey's really expanded out.
Man, he, you know, every time you look, every time you follow, every time you see it, it's like, what's next, man? It just keeps coming back with fire every time he puts something out. So I'm just glad to see that he's doing his thing, and it just keeps getting better and better.
Real deal. Now, next we got the scene updates, and we're kind of moving through here quickly because we have an awesome guest, Dan, but then we're going to have the audio with Ruben. And Mike, I kind of want to focus at least this episode on three things. So you mentioned to me the other day, you go, yo, Jay, if you really break it down, we got the 3 tick marks in the OLP binder. So of course I'm over here. You know, I got to find the key to my filing cabinet right here, Mike. I misplaced it. But once we get the binder open, or a locksmith out here, we're going to update it because you were at freaking weekend. I went to Trucks and Cheeseburgers. But oh, by the way, that wasn't enough, Mike. You had to gallivant on through the Panhandle. So tell us a little bit about how your weekend went with those two events.
Well, bro, we had a awesome. Well, first of all, everybody knows we love going to Biloxi, Mississippi. Of course, everybody knows that's where Scraping the Coast goes down every June. We're there. OLP, gallivants up to the Gulf Coast, and we're there for Scraping the Coast. So now Trip has got this new show, The Frickin' Weekend. And it is at the casino. It's basically across the street from the casino. We stayed at the casino, man, the Harris Resort. And, dude, the pool facing the water, the ocean, the casino, the restaurants. It's what I love about a show where you can arrive and you don't have to leave and you don't have to go nowhere. So that right there is an absolute a star, a check mark, whatever you want to call it in my book. And man, I tell you what, we had a freaking awesome time because the pool, that huge bar, daiquiri bar, I mean, TVs everywhere, got to watch football as we're chilling in the swimming pool, right across the streets, one of our favorite restaurants in Biloxi, the Blind Tiger. They got the best bushwhackers in town. And like I said, you're right on the water, and it was absolutely gorgeous weather all weekend long. The Saturday night a party, we had a bikini contest, a belly flop contest. We had the cabanas all out there around the pool. Man, they kept it open extra for us. And man, we had the DJ out there. Of course, DJ Mays was there, and playing the music. We just had a fantastic time. Guys, I highly recommend that you guys put the freaking weekend on your calendar next year. The dates for next year are going to be coming out soon. So make sure you guys pay attention and definitely check out the freaking weekend. OLP's already locked in. We will definitely be there next year. So make sure you guys come by and see us there. And so we left first thing, me and Mrs. Mayor left first thing Sunday morning. On our way back, it's only about a 30-minute off the interstate, off of I-10. I looked over at Mrs. Mayor, and she already knew what was coming up. She knew what was going to be asked, and she said, "Hey, if you want to, let's go do it." So we stopped by and seen, our fam, Kim and David, and over at Sparks in the Park there in Niceville, Florida. And man, you want to talk about a show with plenty of shade, man, that showgrounds has got trees galore, and just they had a great turnout that weekend. So it was really cool. 2 different shows, and both of them had great turnouts. Both of them had top-notch vehicles at there, and so we got to go there, spend some time with the Boones. The Boones were there, and of course David and Kim. And so, man, we had a great weekend. I mean, there was no doubt about it. Long ride back home because it rained almost the whole way back home. But other than that, man, it's just now. Also, next year, I've been told, don't have confirmation yet, but the shows are going to be on different weekends next year. So everybody will be able to support both the shows next year.
Very cool. Yeah, Josh Riddle Hoover, I always say that name wrong. Josh Bonsai Cruisers, he was, of course, there with the Blazer and a bunch of other people. So it looked like a fantastic event. I've been a couple of times, and it's always fun. Love the shade trees. The freaking weekend on Facebook, it's the freaking FREAKIN weekend show. I tell you what, man, a couple days ago, they shared some of the Mac Media photos of the bikini contest, Mike, and it seemed like the vibe, as you said, was very much like kind of throwback. But this is the cool thing. A lot of times these bikini contests, if we even have them anymore, and these kind of events, it's during the day and it's so hot and you're at a show and you just want to kind of get back to the hotel and go out to eat and stuff. This, like you said, was all like contained in this hotel that's right by the show, right across the street.
Yes, sir.
So, when you look at, this red, little deal here, this is like free advertisement with the bikini contest. That's why, Mike, when I saw these, I was texting you going, "Hey, man, can we maybe go out there again next year?" You know what I mean? Because,
Oh, yeah. We're definitely going out there next year, for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be good stuff. I know the Simmons were out there. You got a chance to see Roxy, but
I seen Roxy. I did not. Yes,
Robert was out gallivanting, or they've got like 4 or 5 720s. Maybe he was like making a run back to the house to switch out trucks and stuff, dude. I mean, dude, their whole family is in it, and I love it.
No, you're absolutely right. And yes, I did see Roxy, and I definitely didn't get to spend enough time with them. And we were busy. It was crazy, but at the same time, I'm glad that they were out there, and I definitely got to make sure I spend more time with them next time. That's for sure.
Yeah, Real Deal Holyfield. Trucks and Cheeseburgers was a lot of fun. I went down and gallivanted down about 8 a.m. on Saturday, got down there 4 hours later, stayed with the big homie Tom Bennett, went out to eat with NC Donnie Brasco, Donnie Yearwood, had a great time, woke up early, did some detailing on the car, cruised over about 30-minute drive to the new park. Everything went great. Mike, it was hot. I'm sure it was hot where you were at. But, dude, Tom's got the deal. He's got a gas-powered small JEGS generator, which I'm going to order one right now. You fill it up, right, with some maybe 93-octane deal. You got 6 hours of electricity, okay? Plug your phone in, whatever. You know what he brings? I help him load up a huge, the biggest box fan you've ever seen, the big round ones, the Home Depot orange color. We had that blowing right next to us. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what we were trying to plan, and we did. We had a good shade area. We had cold drinks. We pre-gamed. Dude, we were doing the dad deal. We pre-gamed with a pub sub the previous night, dude. We had that laced in the cooler, Mike. So, as we get older, I'm doing the next thing. If I can buy a Corvette, I've got the New Balance. I need the white ones now, and I'm going to have the key fob hanging out of the jean short deal, and I'll be locked in, Mike. That's all I need.
Dude, you're always on point. You're always locked in. So, dude, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me.
See, I give him 2 tick marks for the trivia, and then now it's the compliments because I kind of like this, man. I might just try to keep this up, man. There is more scene updates, but we'll cover those next week. I will say this: big stuff is coming from Street Trucks. I don't want to announce anything. Some of you guys have read behind the lines in terms of the post from Brandon Burrell. As well as Randy and others. So that's going to be pretty cool to see what they have going on there. Again, a couple of different events. I was going to wait till the end to mention this, Mike. I know Lonnie Ford and Crystal and others, they had mentioned there was a guy in our scene, unfortunately, Josh Coleman. I know I've met him before. He passed away, I think, on September 10th while working on his truck. I don't know the details. I know that he would often go to breakfast with him. But rest in peace. Anytime we lose someone in the scene, we want to try to acknowledge that. And it's tough to lose anyone, especially if they're close to you. So, may he rest in peace.
Absolutely.
The scene update is brought to you by Garage Gear Clothing. Visit garagegearclothing.com for your sport truck, mini truck, full-size truck, patina van, any of those needs that you have. The holidays are coming. They do have a free shipping option. Technically, if your order's over $100, I think is what breaks you into that. If there's any Black Friday deals, we'll, of course, mention those later in the year. But support the Real Deal Holyfield, garagegearclothing.com. Mike, here's I'm going to try to wind it down here a little quick, again, so we can get to this audio that I want everyone to hear. Can't thank Dan enough for coming on. But here's something that is that's interesting is as we get down to this point of the year, Mike, we're starting to wind it down, the show season, dare I say that. And there's only a couple more shows left. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to sign in to the OLP official show calendar. So when I check out the calendar, I'm trying to memorize all this, man. But, I'm trying to write lyrics for this album that Mike's dropping. It's just like I got too much going on in my head right now. But Fair Enough is in 1 week. So we had Justin Wyatt on recently. Fair, ENUF. Again, there's more information out there. Greene County Fairgrounds. Certainly, if you're up in the Tennessee region, check it out. Showdown in the Valley, Mike, of course, the 6th, 7th, and 8th of October. So many people at Trucks and Cheeseburger said, I'm going. We're gallivanting up. We love Mini Nats. We also want to support this show. It's obviously a different regime, of course, that is throwing this, but it's a different time of year, too. So that's a big draw. The previous week, Mike, we're going to be gallivanting up. These guys are getting ready for us in KY, Kentucky, cruising with cruisers, lowest common denominator is going to be there, Mike.
That's a given.
And, well, I can't tell you. They're working on a special deal for us. And I think, let me just say this, Mike. I'll give you the hint. I think the Spark Show would be happy for what they're working on. Okay? And you're just going to have to go with what, with this plan. We've got a plan. It's kind of a plan. You know what I mean? We've got ambulances possibly going to make an appearance and stuff like that. So, just kind of go with it, Mike. You'll be fine. You know what I mean? The next week
I'm there.
Last Resort Show. Stewart and Kinfolk, they're great people, KIK family. But the Last Resort Show, Mike, is that weekend, the 20th, 21st, 22nd. And from what I understand, Mike, I got my sources in Moscow. They're telling me that some of the, what's the club called? Aftermath.
I believe it would be Aftermath.
Aftermath is going hard in the paint for Last Resort Show, dude.
That would be correct, sir.
It's crazy. SEMA is going to be a couple weeks later. Of course, that first full week into November, so that's going to be big stuff. Of course, Randy and others will be out there, so we'll talk more about other events. The show updates brought to you our kinfolk at AccuAir. Visit accuair.com if you want the best in air suspension components, including the auto leveling systems. AccuAir.com for more. Mike, I've got the podcast update. The one update for everyone is we're getting ready to hit the button. I think I'm going to do it on Friday. I know you spent some time, and I've got everything ready to rock and roll, so be on the lookout the day this drops for something new that I think you guys will appreciate. That's the one update, the podcast update, brought to you by Graphics Mafia. I know they've been a little quiet, Mike, Graphics Mafia, but my understanding is Ryan did get a different job, but Buddy is still out there slinging and printing those stickers. So it's GRAPH. Yeah, GRAPHIX, Mafia.com, right? Hey, Buddy. And Mike, the last thing I got, dude, is the Airhead Nation updates. Was there anything that you've seen out there other than Eastbound Get Down? Because I know that's making its rounds on social media.
Well, that's definitely making its rounds. And I just want to say, since you brought that up, I just want to tell everybody thank you for all the support and for, everybody's already pre-registering and, getting those parking spaces locked in and all these vendors and just everybody that's come on board. Definitely appreciate all the support. And we look forward to seeing everybody. But as far as like Jason posted up Project Banana Hammock, and I just want to give a shout out to Trip for that is probably the coolest trophy I've ever gotten my whole entire life.
You got a trophy, dude? So okay, might have to tell Trip we can't. I mean, you got a trophy, dude.
Well, see, I passed up the trophy for the banana trophy. Yes. I called it my trophy because, dude, was that not perfect? It's actually a wet floor sign.
That's sick, dude.
So, and I thought that was the perfect thing, and Trip got that just for me. And it's actually going to go back because Trip's buddy is going to be putting graphics on this banana for me, and it's going to be pretty badass.
Dude, I know the answer to this question. I think you're not bringing your Mazda to Eastbound, are you? Because I would love to go. If I bring the Cab Plus, if we could somehow get your truck there, if it's not going, I want to do a show off, ODB versus the mayor, and see who can get, dude, more technical points. I mean, we'll have to go back to one of these 90s guys, right? With like the magnifying glass and like, no leaves blowing in, into the car, because then that's going to take a point off. Like really go toe to toe, Mike, and really see. Now, you got more mods than me, let's be honest. I mean, I hate to even admit that, but maybe I could kind of pull together some. I got a radar detector. I got a car phone. I mean, I got stuff that's points, dude. You're not that technical.
No. And well, this is what I was talking about earlier. I don't know what you're talking about, but your Mazda mini truck and my Mazda mini truck parked underneath the pavilion at Eastbound is exactly what I was referring to.
Right. Dude, there you go. Because, I mean, that could be a show. That could be a showdown. Like we basically do. Like we have Rob Seeley there, right? One of the judges, and he goes, "All right, take 10 paces." You know what I mean? Like old school. And we turn around, and whoever's got the more points, like the other guy's got to like fall down.
Hey, dude, I'm in, man. If you're up for it, I'm up for
it. So Mike, I do. The last thing is Frank Pedden. Pedden. I always say his name wrong. I apologize. He's an old school friend, old member of NC and ST, and I know that he's going through some different things health wise. So I'm glad that he's home, and I hope that he hears this. And I, just wish Frank the best. Mike, I think we want to just end it on this. I've been, I somehow hacked into the Eastbound Get Down website. Okay. And I want people to know EBGD, although I say that, it's just my little kind of rap for Eastbound Get Down, because Eastbound Get Down's this really awesome show in January. Mike's been talking about it. Yeah, big deal, right? So, but here's the thing, Mike. I've been seeing some of the frequently asked questions, and I figured maybe in this segment going forward, we'll do a segment where I'll just share like one question that's come in. You know what I mean? So then, like, you could answer it and then just make sure that people know, they're hearing these updates every single week or every episode. What do you think about that?
I think that sounds like a great idea.
So the first one was kind of this is the only one I'm going to say, and then we're going to wrap it up and roll into the audio with Dan. The question was, can I fly a drone at Eastbound Get Down? Now, I think I know the answer, but you're the show promoter along with John, right, and Kim and Shannon. But do you mind answering that question? I mean, what would you tell someone if they came up to you at the show and said, can I fly a drone?
Well, the real quick, easy answer to that question is no. You cannot fly a drone at Eastbound Get Down.
And I always tell people you got to follow all of the, I think it's FAA guidelines, unmanned aircraft systems and all that kind of stuff. What we were trying to do was kind of link out to those, but we would always tell you, and a lot of people they make this mistake, even in a lot of national parks, you're not allowed to fly drones, right? You have to get permits and things like that. So, Mike, here's the bottom line. Except for Hank, we tell everybody, obey all local rules and regulations. Don't go getting in trouble. You know what I mean? It kind of goes back to the message earlier.
Damn straight. So, man, that was so easy. Give me another question.
Yeah, the Airhead Nation doesn't want to hear some of these weird ones coming in, do they, Mike? I mean...
Bro, let's hear it, bro. Let's not stop there.
Okay. Well, I'll give you one more. How about that? And that's it? That's a deal.
One more.
So
one more.
This one was a little lengthy. The guy kind of goes into a paragraph, but he, some people I think are afraid. I mean, because pre-registration right now is open. Some people I think, maybe with their job hours, I don't know, they're worried that, like, what if they have an issue on the way there? So it was kind of a two-parter. He was like, hey, if I came to the show on Saturday and I had to leave for whatever reason, I think we heard this one last year. If, like, let's say something came up and you had to kind of peel out of town, but the judge did get all the points added. The question, this is kind of an easy one. He says, hey, do I have to be there Sunday? And the guy knew that he may not win an award, but if he did win in his class or whatever the points were, does he have to be there to get the trophy?
Well, if he's not there, then he must have somebody there to get the trophy for him, because we don't mail out trophies.
Yeah, because that's an added expense, that's added time, you got to find boxes and all that. And it's like, come on, man, like, maybe just leave it behind. If worst come to worst, it's not like life or death, right? I mean, I don't think.
Well, let's put it this way. I've mailed out trophies in the past, and the trophy got broke. And then when the guy got it, it broke in the mail. And so when the guy got it, then he wants me to replace the trophy.
Yeah.
And at that time, there is no replacing the trophies. So, yeah, it was a disaster, and never again will I mail a trophy.
And that's why I thought that would be a good one to ask, because, sometimes people think, like, on the surface of it, they go, oh, well, that's kind of mean. These guys, they just made a couple bucks. They don't want to mail it. But it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with, again, what Mike just broke down. Mike, I know you always love to thank Stingray Chevrolet. What is it, Lowrider Depot? And I swear it was Rogue something.
Rogue Car Audio and Lowrider Depot and Stingray Chevrolet are our three big sponsors this year. And yes, we would absolutely love to sponsor thank those guys, because without those sponsors, none of this would be possible.
And if you want a crate engine, you can deal directly with Stingray. My understanding, we've seen him at other shows as well, but primarily I have seen him at Eastbound Get Down show. You can kind of cut that deal right there, and you can get one of these crate engines. So it's pretty cool that they've got that kind of level of service right there.
Yes, they do have. They're at Stingray Chevrolet. They do have a performance shop right on property, and yes, you can get anything performance-wise for your vehicle right there at Stingray Chevrolet.
Pretty cool. We got to thank Scraping the Coast for the continued support. As I mentioned, a lot of good people, but also CNS Metalworks. If you want AccuAir, Universal Air products, so on and so forth, hit up Chris and team at CNS Metalworks, Instagram or Facebook, or their website, C&S Metalworks. Mike, we're going to roll into the audio now with Dan, and then we do have a segment afterwards with Ruben Arteaga. I think that's all I got, brother.
Dude, thanks again for calling me. And we didn't do it yesterday. We did it today. Busy, but it's hopefully it's going to start getting a little bit slower for me here.
Hey, I heard they're bringing back Sizzler, and if they do, where you going, Sizzler? That's all I got for you, brother.
Hey, I hope so, bro, because I can't wait to go Sizzler. Because I tell you what, we got a road trip coming here real soon, baby. Real soon, we'll be back on the road again.
We're going to be at Long John Silver's up in freaking Kentucky, brother. Let's do it.
Let's do it, baby. Can't wait. Cops and cruisers, baby.
Take care, man.
All right, brother. See you.
Hey, it's ODB. As we roll into the audio with Dan G, I wanted to remind everyone that this interview is brought to you by Southeast Mini Truckin Nationals, also known as Mini Nats. Join us for the 30th anniversary next year in Maggie Valley, April 19th through the 21st. Be there, Maggie Valley, North Carolina. Mini Truckin Nats on Instagram and Facebook for more information. And the pre-registration opens up on October 1st. Be ready to submit for your approval October 1st. Hey, so like I said, I'm super excited to sit down with Dan to talk some mini trucking history, but really just kind of catch up and talk about the good old days. But Dan, I wanted to say, hey, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with OLP.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time.
I appreciate all the support, man.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, anything I do for mini trucking is top of my list.
I love that, man. That should be a sticker. Now, I practiced in my head. What's the right pronunciation of your last name?
It's Gilliland.
Gilliland.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. Okay, cool. So Dan Gilliland, which I like that.
Correct.
It's got a nice flow to it, man. Like that could have been like, because I'm a big hip hop guy. I was like, that could have been like a hip hop name. I like that.
Yeah.
That's good stuff, man.
Yeah, I don't know where it originates from. I haven't really dug deep. My dad passed away when I was 13, so I didn't really get. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, pancreatic cancer, so it took him quick.
Yeah, it's. We usually don't start off with a subject like this, but I'll tell you this. Like, I mean,
right.
You're on social media a little bit here and there too, and it's so tough. Like, back in those days in the 90s, we didn't have social media, and it's like now, like I go on Facebook and it's tough because you see people like their family struggling, or the family member passes away and stuff, and especially someone like yourself, like I lost my dad in 2017, and it's not easy, but may he rest in peace, brother.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
so I didn't really get to know him or know a lot about him because he worked and I was school, and so it's just one of those things, But it's made me what I am today. Made me a hard worker because I knew if I wanted anything, I had to work my ass off to get it. Yeah,
it's well said, and at least you got to spend some time with him. I know one of my best friends, Noldy Rodriguez, his mom and his dad passed like when he was like really young. I know his dad did. I think his mom lived a little bit longer, definitely longer than his dad, but he was really young, so I know that can be tough. But I wanted to kind of ask, to kind of segue that into like, talk to us a little bit about like maybe where you grew up and things. Like, are you born and bred like SoCal?
Yeah, I was born in Escondido, which is like 30 miles north of San Diego. And when I was 6 years old, we were transferred back to Minnesota, and we lived there for 9 months. And that's where I became a Minnesota Vikings fan.
Really?
Knowing that you're a Green Bay Packer fan.
I was hoping you didn't bring that up.
Yeah, no, so I guess we're like a rival now.
Right. That's crazy. So you went from SoCal to Minnesota.
Yep. And then we only stayed there 9 months, and then my dad got transferred back, and we came back to Escondido.
What kind of work did he do, if you don't mind me asking?
He was a jeweler for Jessup's Jeweler. He was like a buyer and stuff. Like he buys certain jewelry from all the jewelers in New York and L.A.
Like heavy stuff in terms of,
Rolex watches and diamonds and, all the loose stones and all that. So
interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. Well, when you say the E word, Escondido, I learned that city name through the magazines, right? And seeing like the Courtney Hollowells, the Gendros, right, but also like Pete Finland, like Hot Dog Designs, like some of those, they just pop in my head when I hear Escondido. It had to have been like just such a cool place to grow up, though, during that time.
Yeah, they had Valley Parkway, which is right down the middle of Escondido, was like a big cruise place, and everyone went cruising there. And that's where my sister comes in. Is she was 7 years older than me, and she was dating some of the guys that had. Well, my sister had a lowered bug, and so she would take me out cruising with her, and I would see who she was hanging out with, and all the mini trucks and Camaros, and like every kind of car was out there cruising Valley Parkway. Man, and so that's where awesome. I was like, I want something that I'm going to cruise later on, but I never knew I was going to have a mini truck until my sister started dating a guy that had a brand new 620. And dude, so
that's so sick. And let me guess, was he in Too Hip?
No, he wasn't in anything. He was just like by himself. But then I think she was dating him for about a year. His name was Andy Pickron. And then one day my sister called me. She's like, hey, tell Andy he can like take off. He doesn't have to hang out and wait for me to get to the house. I have something else going on. Well, he decided he was just going to hang out with me and play basketball. Well, coming down the street was a Toyota truck that was a full-on show truck, and he was in Southern Coast Mini Truck, and he was a vice president. And he like pulls into our driveway, and I was just like, who are you? And he's like, where's your sister? And then my sister comes rolling up afterwards, and after that I was just like, okay, I'm going to leave right now because I don't know what's going on.
Right.
But my sister ended up marrying the guy with the Toyota truck.
Okay.
And
yeah, because not to jump too far ahead, but I remember I was looking back when Courtney wrote, rest in peace to Courtney, when he wrote the feature for the Tacoma, he mentioned like way back in '82, Dan got his first taste of mini truck lifestyle, back then. And it's crazy to think like, if you think back to that era, we talk about it some here, but even with some of my friends, like, you think of the days of like E.T. comes out, the Indiana Jones movies, Star Wars, from that 78 to like 85, and even through the 80s. I mean, just what an epic era, man.
Yep, it was. I mean, Valley Parkway was like so big that Hot Rod Magazine would come out there. What's a VW magazine was popular back then? Like
VW
Hot VWs.
Yeah, and Hot VWs.
Yeah. All those magazines would come out, and then that place would just, people from San Diego and LA would all show up, and it was just crazy.
Yeah,
you couldn't find a parking spot anywhere.
Yeah, and I got into the Lincolns, and I'm a big Lincoln guy, the 60s Lincolns, and there's a couple guys, there's a big group of different clubs that are out there in these different crews, but I say that because there's someone in the Lincoln scene that he summed it up really well one day. He goes, California it just has the love so much for the car culture. A lot of it, I think, has to do with the climate. But even when I think back to like American Graffiti, and I think back to a lot of these different cruise nights and the stuff like Ruben would talk about Balboa, and you and some of the guys, like Steve Butts will talk about the SoCal stuff. To me, that's just like California. You can't think California without the car culture.
Oh, I know. Especially here in Temecula, Marietta, they have a group called Local Car Scene. Mm-hmm. And this young kid that started it when he was 19 years old, when he has his car meets on Sundays once a month, about 400 to 600 cars show up. And it's every kind of car. It's mini trucks, it's old cars, it's a rice car. Every kind of car shows up, and it's just crazy. He has a college parking lot that he rents just for that event.
Damn, yeah, that's awesome. And it goes back to like you said, those type of events, the Cars and Coffee. There's a big one up on the outskirts of Atlanta. They do like Caffeine and Octane. They even film a TV show there. Like, it's just the car culture to me is so ingrained in our American blood. And even though like when the Indiana Jones movie came out, the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I know it's not everyone's favorite. I'm a big Indy fan, but like at the beginning of it,
we are too.
Yeah, at the beginning of it, it was cool to see like the hot rod, drives over the little mole mound, and they did the little Paramount thing. But like it was cool because George Lucas and Spielberg, they understand like the car culture, and all of that just blends so well with Americana. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that's cool. Now I got to ask you about this. Like in that era, when I was a lot younger, I had the pleasure of talking to the artist behind Radical Rick, in the BMX Plus magazine, Damien.
Yeah.
And that was super cool. But like, did you fall into the BMX skateboarding stuff, or like was it friends, or did you have any dealing in that?
No, I was more into the sports, playing baseball and football and all that because of the neighborhood I had. We all had big orange groves and big yards.
Okay.
And so all the kids in my neighborhood, we were all baseball, football all year round.
Yep.
And then I just started, as soon as I got a taste of Valley Parkway, I just started doing whatever I could to save money because I'm like, when I'm 15, I'm buying a Toyota truck cash,
That's sick, dude.
And that's what ended up doing. My 82 Toyota truck that I got first was $5,000. It was just a strippy, brand new rubber interior, no stereo, no antenna, no right-hand mirror, no mud flaps, the crappy tires. It was just a strippy, and my brother-in-law helped me lower it, tint the windows. Then I saved up for a stereo, and then I saved up for a spoiler. So when I turned 16 and got my license, my truck was already started to be fixed up already. So I'm like, my mom's not driving me to high school when I'm 16.
I know, and it's so different now. I don't know if you've heard this from friends or if you have kids, but it's like the kids these days, like, the difference is like they can get on their video games or their computer and they've got that social connection. Like to your point, like we wanted the liberty to get out of the house and go hang out with our friends,
Yep. That's exactly what I wanted to do. I had 4 friends that had 510s, and for a little while, first I was in Southern Coast Mini Trucks when I first started out.
Okay.
And then I was in that club for a little while, and then we started our own little club called Altered Suspension, and we did that for a little while. And then I was working at a gas station down by my house, and 2 Hip came through the parking lot. And when I turned 16, my mom paid to have graphics put on my truck. And so they're like, hey, you want to be in our truck club? And so that's when I got into 2 Hip.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's awesome, dude. The good old days. Now, I got to ask you this. What was the gateway drug for you in terms of the scene? Like, did you go down, like, 15 years old, some homies, you guys go down to the Valley, I think you said Valley Parkway, was it called?
Yeah.
Did you go down there, and was that the bug that bit you? Or, like, what actually kind of thrust you into it?
Just my sister with her
that's
boyfriends
right.
and their
Boyfriend.
trucks.
Yep. So you were literally seeing that, and you're like, dude, this is cool.
Yeah, like because my brother-in-law's truck had like an overhead console with all the stereo and everything, and the whole back end looked like, you know how the vans were back then, you know, where they had a wet bar and you know, crystal ball hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah.
Well, he had all that in the back, and I was like, this is what I want.
Yep.
So then back then I think I was only 10 years old when I very first got to ride in his truck. They had truck rallies back then. I don't know if you ever heard of those at all.
It seemed like that was the segue between the van days and the minis to a certain extent, because they had a lot of the step-up campers and stuff in that era, right?
Right. Yeah. But road rallies were like you start off with a questionnaire, and those questions would answer.
That's right.
To get you through the city, you had to answer all these questions, and at the end, you know, whoever was there the fastest won something, you know.
Yeah, I've heard one person talk about those, and when they mentioned it, I thought of, like, I've heard of the guys in the boats that do these poker runs down, like, in Miami, where they go from, like, you know, they have these cards, and you go to, like, this one dock, and then, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah, like a poker run.
Yep.
Yeah, if you saw a gumball rally, it's almost the same thing.
Yep. Yeah, I know.
You're not going across the country. You're only staying in a little city, and then they'd have a truck show at the end.
That's cool. Yeah, someone's got to do that again. That'd be a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, that's where I got my bug.
Yeah, so when you had that Toyota, did you find that, like, you enjoyed that for a certain amount of time, and then do you get to an age where you go, I don't want it anymore? Like, what happened with that?
The unfortunate was that one day I was going to work, and the freeway where I was trying to transition over to, it kind of like has one on-ramp coming onto the freeway, and then on-ramp cutting into that ramp and getting off the freeway.
Yep.
I was going from like the fast lane over to those lanes to get to my freeway, and some lady stopped in front of me because she was only doing like 30 miles an hour coming on her ramp.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh no, and I like swerved to miss her into the the emergency lane, and there was a truck parked there. Ooh. And so I slammed into the back of it like at 65 miles an hour.
Dang.
Totaled my truck.
And you were okay?
Yeah, and I wasn't even wearing a seatbelt or anything. I don't know, I had a roll cage in that thing back then.
Wow.
And then I had one of those GT Grant steering wheels, and I didn't even know I did what I did because my hood kind of folded up in front of me, and I jumped out to see how much damage was done to my truck.
Mm-hmm.
And the truck I hit it so hard it started going up the freeway, and I thought it was someone that was taking off. And
damn,
I came back to my truck, and my steering wheel was bent all the way in half from me holding on.
Holy crap, man! That's a lot of people get in accidents, probably not even anywhere near that bad, and they don't even make it.
I know. I walked away, and I sat on the side of the freeway waiting for CHP to show up.
Wow.
But yeah, so then after that, I bought a Celica. So
okay, yeah. So then was that like your daily and kind of a little bit of custom car for a while?
Yeah, I had that for a couple years, and then I bought another truck. I bought a '88 black Xtra Cab with a snug top. And I put Porsche alloys on it.
Oh, yeah.
That was my truck for a few years.
Yeah, I'm seeing this theme, Dan, something with Toyota. Do you like some Toyotas? I love it.
Well, I worked for Toyota Vescondito for 38 years now.
Oh, awesome. So it's like in the blood. That's awesome.
Yeah, as soon as I turned 18, I started working there. And so all the discounts of getting a truck and having it worked on for $20 an hour labor was probably for about 20 years we had that price as an employee.
That's sick, dude. Yeah, I tell you, I don't know a lot about the Toyota trucks and the engines and stuff, but the one thing that always comes to mind is the marketing, right? And we all know, like, these things run forever. Of course, you do your maintenance and all that is important, but when I was a kid, my dad would get these Eastern Airline magazines they were like Sports Illustrated and stuff, but they would put this clear cover on them. I guess they would come off airplanes, and my dad his buddy would give him boxes of magazines. And I remember looking at those magazines when I was younger, and on the back, would always be Toyota. And it was that, you'll remember this back in the day. Remember when they had the ad campaign when people would jump up in the air with their legs up in the air?
Yeah.
It was, I love what you do for me, Toyota.
Yep.
And it was crazy because that marketing was so, like, I as an adult, like, I remember that vividly. So
yeah, and that was for a long time. They had that.
Yep.
For a long time.
Yeah, I love those old ads. And my dad was the one person, like, he would sometimes say things like wrong, or it was his not dialect. I mean, he was born in Florida, but like he was the only person I knew that instead of saying Toyota, like most of us, he would say, he would say Toyota or Toyota or something like that. And I remember when Toyota was first getting in the NASCAR truck stuff, he goes, "Man, they're letting in the Toyotas now." And I was like, "Yeah, man, I know, Dad, it's a crazy world now." But
my dealership has a race team that they've had since I've been there. They race buggies and trucks and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that's sweet, man. Now, before we talk about more trucks, I want to ask you this because I'll forget. When you think like when we were talking about Escondido, right, and the Courtney Hallowell, rest in peace, and Gendro and stuff, because you were going to that Valley, Parkway area and stuff, did you end up? I mean, you kind of talked about with Southern Coast Minis and Altered Suspension. Did you end up linking up with some of these guys that became the bigger names in the scene back in those days?
Well, only Brian was mainly the one person that I, was always somehow connected to.
Yep.
But there was a guy, Steve Rogers.
Okay.
His son now is Ryan Rogers. That's in Sunset. You've always commented on his truck.
Right. Because we were going to have him on because Mike Collins linked us up with him.
Yeah. And so, Steve Rogers was in a club called High Anxiety, and he was in Southern Coast too when I was there.
Okay.
But Ryan is quite the kid too.
Yeah, Ryan.
I got a chance to him about it.
Yeah, I got a chance to meet him at SEMA one year. He comes up, we started shooting the crap, and I go, "Oh yeah, I know your truck. I know your Instagram name."
Yeah. But I know like Alex Anderson, Alex Hu and all them, rest in peace. And I mean, there wasn't really anybody else I really knew that was big time at all.
Yeah,
especially back in the day.
Exactly. And I think when we were texting one day, you do know, or you might be friends with Mike Collins, right? Because he lives in the greater area down there.
Yeah, he's like not too far from my house, along with Steve Butts and all that. We're all up here. And I'm like best friends with Mike Collins' friend.
Gotcha.
So we all like gone to shows together and hung out.
Yeah.
I didn't even know who Mike Collins totally was, except for when my truck was being built, his 55 Buick, Brian was working on his Buick at the same time.
Interesting. And the cool thing about Mike, if you happen to listen, I know he's a listener, he's just such a good dude, and we'll exchange some texts here and there. I didn't forget about Steve yet. I know I had text Steve, and I need to relink up because hopefully we'll get him on. But with Mike, he's another name that you could kind of say, like, when you think of California and the car culture, when I see his Instagram, I mean, he's out having fun. Like,
he's everywhere.
Like all you guys are out, like, living, your kind of American dream, and he's out there hitting the shows with his car, and he's loving life, man.
Yeah, he is. He hits all the concerts. Like, he's everywhere all the time.
Oh, yeah. So you talked a little bit about the Celica, and then you get back into Toyota. Was that Toyota, does that lead you into, because I don't want to fast forward too quick, but like, we start to get to the mid-90s, 95, the Tacoma comes out, and it's a hit, of course, amongst many truckers. Talk to us a little bit about how, Too Low Taco comes about.
Well, one day at my work, like everything else that happened in my life,
right.
Like everything went down when I was at work. Anyway, Brian rolls up in a green Tacoma that he built, and he lays it out on the ground And I was like, what the hell? Like, how is, like, I didn't ever see an airbag truck or body drop truck, you know, like, it was just something he just created, you know? And so I go out there, I go, Brian, like, what is this? You know, like, how? He goes, oh, it's all airbags. And he, like, showed me everything. And I was like, so how do I get one of these?
Hell yeah.
How soon can you build it?
Your antennas went up.
And, yeah, like, I was getting ready to go to the river because it was, like, Labor Day weekend. And I had a brand new Toyota Tacoma 4x.
Okay.
And I said, when I get back, I'm going to sell this truck, and I'm going to buy a Tacoma, and I'm going to bring it to you. He's like, okay. And so I went to the river, came back. I knew a guy that wanted to buy my truck, sold it. And then I was looking for a black Tacoma with gray interior, and there was none in the whole San Diego County and outside of San Diego County. I had to drive like 7 hours north to do a dealer trade with my work,
Mm-hmm.
and then bring it back. And so I like left work at like 2:00 in the afternoon, and I told the dealership, I'm like, don't close. I'm going to be there by the time you guys close to trade trucks, and then drive this one back 7 hours, and then go to work the next morning at 7.
And they were like flexible. They're like, yeah, no problem.
Yeah. They said, yeah, just be here by 10 and we'll switch for you. And so I took a brand new Toyota truck up to them and drove my truck back. And then the next morning I took it over to Brian. I'm like, here's my keys.
That's
but I
sick.
did not know what was involved in a body drop, you know, doing all like cutting out the floor and cutting the bed up. I was like, because I dropped it off, and then like the next day I went back and he had the whole interior out of my truck, and I'm like, what are you doing? He goes,
You're like, this is ready to try.
Yeah, it was like a brand new truck. And so I was like, oh my God, I didn't know that that's what you had to do. You know, all he showed me was a suspension, you know, with the airbags and everything. So that's all I thought was going to be done.
Yeah, and
so I was like,
for those that are listening, Tulo Taco ends up, we'll talk more about September 98. It runs up in issue 81 of Mini Truckin Magazine. So do you think, like, timeline-wise, if it was Labor Day, so are you thinking the truck was probably built pretty quick? So, like, we're probably talking, like, 97 at that point, you think? Like, late 97?
Well, this was, it was late 97, because it was a 98 modeled truck.
Right. Yep.
Right. So Brian goes, I want this done by Rezo that year. And so he called Rob Rodell.
Yep.
He called, you had Dirthead Dave, you know, Dave Chappelle.
Yes, I know his name, yep.
Yeah. And then somebody else was there to help, that worked for him, that they were busting it out day by day, like working on it, trying to get it done. And then he goes, Boomer Glasner came out, and he was working for Brian doing body work, and so he painted it black. And so I was like, all good, thinking, like, okay, it's almost done. Rezo's coming. Got 2 weeks left or whatever. And Dirthead Dave shows up with Ryan Evans at the back counter at my work and says, hey, this guy wants to paint some graphics on your truck. And I'm like, I don't know, you know. He goes, here, pulls out his ink, like he had a whole bunch of pens, and he just draws it right in front of me in like 30 seconds. He goes, what about this? I go, okay, you can do it.
That's sick. Yeah, because Ryan's legendary now, you know, of course.
Yeah, yep.
That's
so after
sick.
he finished my truck, I had a Sea-Doo, and I was sick of everyone having the same Sea-Doo as I did when I went to the river.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, this is next. So he painted my Sea-Doo with a bunch of graphics, and I still have it to this day.
That's
sitting in my garage.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and here's the cool thing, you know, Courtney was so good with the write-ups, and the subtitle of it was Texas and SoCal Customizers Team Up to Create One of the Baddest Tacomas Anywhere. And Rob Rodell, he even chimed in on the post in our Facebook group and said, Dan's a great dude. Ask him how he felt dropping off a truck that he really hadn't even driven yet. And you kind of alluded to that. It was like, you're like, okay, here's the keys, man.
Yeah, I'd say I had a few nightmares after I saw the whole floor cut out and the bed cut up. I had nightmares of like water pouring into the cab or the floor falling out from underneath me. You know, being like Fred Flintstone.
Right.
So I was scared at first, but then when I would go there every day on my lunch hour, I'd ride my bike from Toyota to Brian's shop and spend like 40 minutes of my lunch hour watching them work on my truck. Then I'd ride back real quick. But yeah, after watching them for a few weeks, then I was comfortable, and then it was all good after that.
Yep. Now, and you had kind of, like you said, you had been friends with Brian, so it wasn't like, you just didn't know this guy at all. Like, you were literally like, you had the confidence is what I'm kind of getting at, that he was going to knock it out.
Oh, yeah, because when I saw Joey's truck, the green one, I was just like, that thing was badass. And then he told me that it was already sold and going to Japan. So I was like, oh, well, then I'm going to be the only Tacoma that's finished around here,
Yep. Yeah, what was cool back then in those days, obviously the internet, and I don't want to say the internet was at the infancy, but it kind of was, like 95, 96, 97. A lot of the internet sites were very basic, but Dan, we lived on Sport Truck, okay, the website.
Yeah,
and what we loved was like, it was at the infancy of digital photos, right? And, we would go on there a couple weeks later, and as time went on, it was like the next day, the Monday after the show. But Rezo, like you said, Resolution's 98, and I'll share the photo. Like, it's there. The Tacoma's there. It's got the, the graphics on it. It's black, it's laid out. It's got the wheels. It's got the tint. It's got the Phantom grille. And it's literally there. And Lomigo was there, too.
Yeah, and so was Brian's...
Capri. Was it a Caprice? Caprice,
yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that was in Primer's stage. He had just gotten that one done. But the cool part that Brian, he let me drive his Ombre for a few months while he was working on my truck too.
That's sick. Was it white still then, or was it?
No, it was all finished. It was all finished orange and with all the graphics. He's like, "Here, I'm not going to drive it for a while. You can drive it. I don't care."
Dude, that's one of my favorite trucks ever, and you'll appreciate this, Dan. Of course, it's on the cover of Truckin', but I got to see it for the first time this year at Mini Nats, and a guy, NC Tractor, a negative camera tractor guy, great dude.
I think Tractor is the one that had the green Tacoma.
Yes.
I couldn't remember his nickname.
I think he was, and he loved that truck, as you know. He kind of like partnered with Brian, and he was homies with him, and he helped on the truck. But he was able to buy it back, even though it was in really rough condition. And he totally redid every single thing that needed the love. And, dude, I told him, I said, bro, that truck, like, that's so cool that you got to cruising around, man.
Yeah. That was, I drove it to the coast. I drove it, plus I had a garage to keep it in at night. So, and I cleaned it, because Brian knew how I was. I was, like, OCD on everything I owned.
Yep.
So he's like, I don't care. You'll probably come back cleaner than when you took it,
Right.
So he didn't, so he didn't care.
So, like, as it comes together from, we'll say Labor Day through the end of that year, and it hits Rezo, you basically went on a crazy run from that Rezo that rings in the new year all the way through 98 until it gets shot.
Yeah. Yeah, I drove it to every show that I can go to. I mean, I've always been like, I never trailered any truck I owned.
That's sick, dude.
I drove it to every single show. Like, just before COVID, I drove my other truck to Arizona. But that's been my motto. I'm like, why build it if you're not going to drive it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I know. And I was fortunate all those years to have the VHS tape that Steve Nielsen from Altered Images, he was in NorCal, but when he sent us footage, or he sent the VHS, we would watch that VHS, and it was like back with the internet being kind of at the infancy, And I remember watching it like in the early 2000s, late 90s, and when we would see like SoCal, when you had it at or Cal Truck Jam 98 in that August, like that footage that we've released. And the cool thing was, even us in Florida, like I would look at that truck and go, man, the whole, the bed floor's raised, you had the battery in the, in that compartment.
Floor,
yeah, and then the notch cover, like, and with the rhino lining, like all of that stuff came together, and it just was like the best way I can describe it. It was like it was a complete truck.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to say Brian hooked me up with a lot of people. Like my rims, we went to a rally, and he goes, "This guy wants to get his rims out there. Let's go to his shop, and you can pick out some rims you want." And the guy has this whole display of rims, and he's like, "What about these?" Like a whole display. And then I look down, like under his desk off to the left. I'm like, "Well, what are those?" He goes, "You want those?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So that's when those Volantes, I think they're called. He's like, "You want those? I'll send you those." So then, I got free rims, and then Nathan Hall, that Tuckin Lugs.
Yes, yep.
He worked at a stereo shop and was good friends with Brian, and Nathan was building his truck around the same time as mine, and Nathan hooked me up with a stereo system, at cost. It was just one cool thing after another. Like Brian knew a Rhino guy, he knew the guy who sold the plexiglass that I put across the bed there, and so. It's just Brian was like one hookup after another on that truck.
Yeah, he was so connected, and he's such a humble guy. Like I know Brian will listen to this, so shout out to Brian. But like getting a chance to meet him, and just, he's just, even how he said he approaches some of his customers. Like if the people are nagging, and he's like, look, you want me to do your stuff, I'll do it, but just let me do it, right? I mean, he's an artist, and when we saw the truck, though, Dan, like I said, I kind of alluded to it, like, as many truckers. There's all different levels to this, right? I mean, you've been in this, 40 years, give or take, right? And the stuff doesn't happen overnight. But a lot of mini truckers, we were going to shows on Primer and this and that. But like this truck, the way you guys were able to orchestrate it, right, with Brian and I know, like you said, the other guys, including Rob, when they do all this and it comes out, like it was like, dude, it was like an uppercut, right? Because it was like, boom, we got this new truck, it's done.
Right.
And when we
looked at it, license.
Yeah, we looked at it and we're like, dude, this truck is complete, man. So
thank you. Yeah, I miss that truck so bad. I mean, it had luxury, had air conditioning, had all the power windows, like everything on it that I could only dream of when you're driving a body drop truck and you're driving and it's like smooth like my Lexus, like
yep.
You couldn't ask for any more. I mean, I was really sad to sell it to Brant, but
yeah, I want to talk about that too.
My son was on his way. That I got a girl pregnant, and he was on the way, and I had just gotten divorced the year before, and so I had to buy something, to haul my kid around, so I had to let it go.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I was always curious. Now, let me ask you this, Dan. Like, what was your favorite aspect of the Tacoma Tulo Taco? Or favorite mod? Like, even if, because I know it's a trick question, because you can kind of go, well, the creature comforts. Like, you kind of all, like, you were like, man, it was great to drive. But did you have a favorite mod or a favorite aspect of the truck?
Well, I have to say the favorite mod was when I was driving Brian's Ombre. He was on vacation, and I accidentally locked the keys in the truck because I wasn't used to no door handles. And it was pouring down rain, and Brian told me, like, oh, if you accidentally lock the keys in, just turn the mirror sideways and push this button, the door will pop open. Well, I did that. Well, the button fell down into the mirror, and so I couldn't get into the truck. So I ended up busting out the window to get in.
Wow.
But anyway, so I said, I need something to get into this truck because I know when I am going to wash it or something, I'm going to have the stereo on and my key is going to be ignition, I'm going to lock myself out.
Yep, like so many of us have.
Yeah, so Nathan Hall put a power window switch on the firewall up inside the fender well.
Sick.
And so whenever I close the door, I'd be like, oh yeah, I got the power window switch, and I just push that button and the window would go down.
That's sick.
So
dude.
that was probably the best mod I would ever say for any mini truck with no door handles. That's the only way to go.
I love it. Yeah, you have to have some hidden way to pop a door, or like I even like that. I mean, that's like next level, you know. And
yeah, I didn't want to depend on a solenoid.
Oh yeah. Now the thing that I always liked too was like you said, the center section of where the notch was at. How you had when Brian did it, he did like the 90 right there, so you had this nice square, just real clean notch there. And with the bed liner all done, like you said, you could put a piece of plexi there. And then the battery, how it was sunk in. I'm sure some guys had done it, but like when I saw that in the magazine, I go, man, he's got this compartment where the battery sits. And later on down the road, like into the late 90s, into the 2000s, you'd see guys that do it, and they'd have their ice cold drinks in there and kind of make it like a cooler. Yeah. But to me, like all of that came together really clean.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I like that feature too. I wish I would have kind of done something like that on this last truck because of certain reasons of not being able to lift it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a cool feature too. I mean, that truck had a lot of good features, I should say. I mean,
yeah, and it not being a regular cab, how important is that? Being able to put your seat back further. I don't know how tall you are, but I mean, that was like almost a creature comfort built in, because us mini truckers, we were used to, like you said, you started with a really watered down version of a truck back in the day.
Yeah. When I was younger, I was like, I want to be like those older guys with the badass paint jobs and all the features,
Yep. Now, a couple more questions about the Tacoma, and we'll move on. But do you remember anything about the photo shoot? Like, I would assume you were there that day.
Oh yeah, I spent all night the night before detailing my truck and staying up all night, making it perfect. Sure. And then I drove up to LA, and I pulled in the parking lot, and I was like, I wonder where we're going to shoot this. Everything going through my head, like, where should I park? What should I do?
Yep.
And I met up with Courtney, and that's when he's like, hey, I'm getting called away. I have to go do something else somewhere. That, he introduced me to the guy that was going to shoot it.
Yeah, Mike Shartzis.
Yeah. And he's like, okay, well, just follow me. We're going to go like 30 miles away, and or not 30 miles, probably like 15 miles away, and we're going to go up in these hills, and we're going to shoot it there. And so we were driving around, and I saw all these giant mansions, and so I was like, oh, cool, we're going to go in someone's driveway, knock on their door, and lay it out. And he pulled over across the street from this dirt pad. He goes, we're going to shoot it right there. I go, right there in the dirt? And back then, there was no quick detailer or anything like that. It was like, so how am I going to clean it once I brought my detail stuff, but nothing like where I was going to be able to wipe it down and make it perfect, like it was. But he's like, yeah, just pull it in. And he goes, don't worry, stuff won't show up, in the film, or we can fix it or whatever. I'm like, okay, so I pulled it down there, and my tires got all dirty, and so I wiped those down and wiped the whole truck down with best I could, without it making any dirt streaks or anything.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I stepped away to start to shoot it, this big old wind dust cloud comes and just wipes it out. And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I'm like, guess I gotta wipe it down again.
You're like, damn it.
Yeah. It happened one more time after he got a dozen shots in, and it happened again, and so I wiped it down one more time, and then the rest of the time he did the photo shoot after that. But
yeah, interesting. And what was ironic, and we're going to play some audio after this where we talked to our one of our best friends, Ruben Arteaga. He recalls when I was chatting with him, and I had posted in our Facebook group, he goes, man, I was there that day. And I was like, man, you were everywhere. And he said, he was good friends with Shartzis. And he'll talk a little bit about some of what he remembers. But he seems to remember Anaheim Hills, somewhere up in that area.
That's where it was.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't remember the exact spot. I was just still in awe, of my truck's going to be in a magazine,
Yeah.
And I had no idea it was going to be a centerfold or anything. I didn't know anything about anything of what was going to happen. I was hoping for a cover with a model and all that, but he's like, yeah, no, it's not going to happen. So I was like, okay.
Yeah, well, when I talked to Brian and even Ruben and other people, and I know, I'm sure you share the same sentiment, we all look at it as it was a covered truck. And I know some people can slice the dice and go, well, they don't put a lot of black cover, trucks on covers. And it's like, yeah, that's been disproven. I know they could use that excuse. But really, to me, the way I sum it up in my mind, Dan, is it just was the 10th anniversary issue. And to me, it was a centerfold, and it's the cover truck. You know what I mean? To me, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I was happy that was a centerfold and that issue. It's a collector's issue, so, that's one really good thing to be a part of.
Oh, yeah.
Especially for, this magazine.
Yeah, and there were two Toyotas on the cover. You had Last Look and Pat's Ballistic, and then you had Skybody, which, how ironic was that? It wasn't on the cover before Mike Collins' truck, but it appears on that one. So SoCal, let's just say California was representing in that issue.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
I was proud,
Oh, yeah.
I was proud to be part of that.
Now, we've had one of our homies, our big homies, Brant, on from Graphic Disorder. Brant's had a lot of success. We use them for all of our artwork. And what's cool is, although like you kind of laid down, some of the reasoning behind letting it go, and I know that's a tough thing, and sometimes you go, man, that truck was perfect. The cool thing was when we had Brant on, he had told the story on how he ends up acquiring it many years ago. And then he also, in our Facebook group, had chimed in. Of course, naturally, a lot of people don't study this stuff as much as maybe we do. They kind of go, hey, does Dan still have it, and things like that. And Brant had chimed in, and he goes, well, he reminded people that it wasn't an accident, and that's what led, of course, to the repaint. But it's such an iconic truck, and the cool thing is now I think we're at an age where, like, if you were really dire and you said, yo, I want to reproduce this truck, like, you could do it. Like, mini trucks weren't a fad to the point that nobody builds them anymore, and you're good friends with Brian, by the way. So at the end of the day, like, if you ever wanted to, you could, but you've had fun with other stuff too, that in a couple things we'll talk about.
Yeah, I would love to. I even crossed my mind at one time where I was like, if I can't find that D50 I want, then maybe down the road I'd build it again if I could find those rims, again, and then have Ryan, paint it again.
Right. Yeah, do like an homage type thing.
Yeah, because I love that truck more than anything in the world, and I have the Toyota people that can redo the motor and all that stuff, so because I like to drive my trucks and not have to worry about anything breaking down.
Yeah, so I'll remind people, if you've got the Mini Truckin Magazine issue, it's September 98, issue 81. Of course, we're up in negative camber, and basically the reason why they spun that as the 10th anniversary is because the magazine has one issue in 88, of course 4 issues in 89, and then they were able to say from 88 to 98, so that's how it ended up like that. But before we talk about a couple other things and then wrap it up, I wanted to ask, like, any other good memories or anything else you wanted to maybe share about Tulo Taco, anything that comes to mind?
I don't know, it was fun driving it to the river. And even Ryan, when he painted my Sea-Doo, he's like, okay, when we go to the river for this one truck show, I want to ride your Sea-Doo,
Right.
So that was a good memory. And then, every time I drove that truck, it was this, I don't know, the CHP always had a thing for it where they just wanted to pull me over and write me tickets galore.
Like, was like a too low ticket? Is that, I know it ties into the name, but is that one that you got a lot?
Yeah, and then I got one for altered suspension, headlights too low, tinted windows, I don't know, they had it in for me. And luckily I worked with a guy at Toyota that he was a sheriff, like, on the side.
Wow.
And so he would just sign off all my tickets.
That's epic, dude.
So like when the CHP would be like, I'm going to write a book on this, I'd be like, okay, go ahead.
Sure, no problem. You were like the
He'd be
nicest guy.
Yeah. I didn't say nothing. I just say, okay. And they're like, look at me funny, like, okay. But,
You're like, I take it as a badge of honor. I'm a mini trucker, man.
That was like a good memory I had of driving that truck, or a couple good memories.
Now, I have to ask this because I'm sure some listeners will be like, man, why didn't you ask? So is there any correlation between the graphics on the Sea-Doo, or it's just totally different than what the Tacoma was?
They're kind of like Sean Dell's paint job on his truck.
Cool.
Yeah. Because I wanted something to stick out, so like when I saw friends at the river, or they saw me park somewhere along the river, they knew it was me, and that they would pull over on their boats or Sea-Doos. And,
right.
Like, hey, there's Dan,
Yeah. Now, was it a yellow Sea-Doo? Because I know yellow was a super popular. Yeah, in that era, Sea-Doo, that was their color.
Yeah, it started off with yellow, but Ryan painted the whole front purple and then made it look like it was peeling away. And then he added like the graphics on the back, and then he put a skull of a Viking sinking underneath the water.
Sick. Yeah, and rest in peace, Eric Coleman, who painted, of course, Sean Dell's truck and so many others.
Yeah.
There's a lot of legacy there, and certainly want to give him the props there. But let me ask you this, a couple more things. So a lot of people may not know this, and I'll be honest, I didn't draw the correlation until not that long ago. Now, I'm going through every issue on YouTube, as you know, but of course, I'm very far away from 2012 issues, but the Toyota Xtra Cab. Okay, this you basically, in my mind, you have Tulo Tacoma, Tulo Taco, as a cover truck, but oh, by the way, you fast forward to the late early 2010s, you basically build another Toyota pickup.
Yep, and that was all because of my son. Like when he was about 6 years old, he noticed the poster of my Tulo Taco.
Really?
He's like, "What is that?" He's like, "What is that, Dad?" And so I told him, like, it was a truck I had, I built it, back then, and that's, the truck I had. He goes, "So can we build one?" And I go, "Well, I have to find the truck I really want to build first, and then we can go from there." And I think it wasn't even a week or two later, my next door neighbor that I didn't really know pulls in with this 87 Toyota truck long bag Xtra Cab for sale.
Really?
He only wants $2,000 for it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy it. And my intentions were only to just slap a paint job on it, the simple paint job, lower it with some tires and rims, and call it a day.
We're mini truckers, man. I mean, that's what we tell ourselves.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking for my son. I was thinking, he'll be happy with just having the truck,
Yeah.
And so he was going through all my magazines, and he's like, "So, Dad, can we build a truck to get on the cover of the magazine?" I was like, that is a hard thing to do, And so we went, and I just started off with, because it was a bone stock truck, and so Nathan Hall had some tires and rims laying around, and he's like, "Hey, you want these tires and rims for your truck?" And so I was like, okay. So I slapped those on there, and I went to go pick up my son. That was the first thing he saw, right away. He's like, "Oh, you got new tires and rims? What are we doing next?" And so I was like, okay, he's hooked.
Right.
And so then I went and bought a Phantom grill, and I took it over to Brian's house, and he put the Phantom grill on while his kids played with my son, and we spent the day over there hanging out. And then he was like, "Okay, Dad, so what are we doing next?" And it was just one thing after another to where I'm like, okay, I guess I gotta go the full extreme. And
what a great
son,
man.
Yeah, so then I started breaking lowering blocks. For some reason, they kept breaking. So I said, okay, that's it. Brian, it's time to do the suspension, So I dropped my truck off with him, and he did the cantilever rear suspension and the airbags and the notch. And then I decided, well, while he's got it, I'm just going to leave it with him for a while. Let's do suicide doors. And then I got it back for a little while. And then we did the body drop. And from then on, it was like, okay, that's when I got into extreme lows, is when I was doing all that to my truck.
Yeah, and you were basically, just so everyone knows, like you were in NC, and you know that truck was kind of gone, and you were, just kind of laying low a little bit, and then after you end up, doing the extreme lows thing, you kind of, talk to some of the guys, and they go, well, man, once you were in, and so that all worked out good, and the extreme lows, everybody was cool with that.
Yeah, yep.
Which was cool.
Because once I got my truck painted and finished and all that, they were okay. And, that was in the magazine that they were good with me moving on.
Yeah. So for those scoring at home, April 2012, you got to go look at this issue. You got Dan's Toyota Xtra Cab, and we'll share the photos of it. Crazy paint job on it. It's got the clear windows, of course, the glass house, if you will.
Yep.
And oh, by the way, the cool thing was to me is, you fast forward, give or take 15 years. And, this truck that really in our minds was a cover truck in 98. Oh, by the way, you come back and go, all right, I'll give you a cover truck, right? And you come out with this wild paint, long bed, a little bit different. And John Mata, shout out to him, John Mata Jr., he ends up shooting it, and it was an indoor shoot.
Yeah, that was quite the experience. And that's when that whole cover truck
curse,
I don't know what you call it.
Was that?
Yeah, the curse was out.
I know people keep talking about that.
Yeah, so I was kind of nervous about that part, but I was like, I've been driving it already, so I didn't really worry about it too much.
Yep.
But it was always like in the back of my head before the shoot. So we did the shoot, and I was driving home, and Alan, the guy who painted it from AK Airbrushing, he was following me in his truck with all my detail stuff because I had nowhere to put it in my truck.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to like Corona, which is right outside of where his shop is, and just down the road would be my house. So I was like, okay, I could put some of the stuff on my front seat for right now, and then I'll be good. We pulled over into a gas station, and right when I pulled out of the gas station, both my upper control arms snapped in half.
Yeah, because I saw a post when I looked back on your Facebook or something too that you had commented one time, like a bolt fell out or something like that.
Yeah, that was on it. That was way after this.
Okay, that was after that. Okay.
Yeah, my truck was pulling to the left as I was like going to these shows and all the time. Like, maybe my alignment's out. Maybe I hit something on the road and it caused my alignment to be out. And one of the techs looked and he's like, Dan, your upper control arm bolts fell out.
Damn.
I was like, what? So it was like God was watching out for me when I was driving that truck.
Yeah. I've had some hiccups myself too, where it's just like you go, man, if I was at high speed, if I was on an interstate, right, that type of situation, you go, man, I may not be here,
Right. Yeah, I mean, that was 2 times where, because it was bumper to bumper traffic all the way to Long Beach for that photo shoot. So I was only going like 20 miles an hour at the most for an hour and a half.
Oh, believe me, I know. Last September, a year ago, I was in Cali for some Lincoln stuff and some pop culture stuff. And, dude, Dan, I could not believe it. Like, I heard the traffic was bad. And I'm like, I'm going to go visit the big homie Jeff at Devious Customs, right? And I'm like, he's like 45 miles away. I'll be fine. 3 hours later, dude.
Yeah, it's bad.
I'm like, bro, what the hell? But, to your point, I think something that people don't realize is you start getting to 2012, after your issue 244, there's only 25 left. Now, of course, the team is going to bring back Mini Truckin all these years later. About 10 years later, it's going to get resurrected, which is very cool, right? I mean, in this world we live in, the technology we have, it'll be neat to see that. But what stands out to me with that truck, though, the Xtra Cab, is the wild paint. Of course it was low. Did you want to go crazy with this, or how did that come about?
Yeah, like like I said earlier, like Shondell was like one of the paint jobs I've always wanted my whole life. Like I've always wanted something really crazy like that. I mean, with my Tacoma, I didn't want to go that crazy because it was black.
Yep.
But this truck, I wanted to do something like that. And then as I thought about it, I was like, well, I want something bright from a distance, but then I want graphics and I want airbrushing as well. And so Alan is like, well, don't you like music a lot? Like, you're always talking about bands and music and all that. And I was like, oh, yeah. He goes, well, maybe we can do something music related on the truck with airbrushing. And so I was like, okay, well, let me go home and think about what I'd want to do. And so I was kind of really nervous because I was like, what if it's stupid? You know, if I put it on there, it's just dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And so Alan's like, well, why don't you just go home, find some pictures, you know, and see what you can come up with. So I'm like, okay, I want it to be like evil stuff. I want skulls and stuff. So I was like, I'll pick some of my favorite bands and I'll look at their album covers and see where it goes from there. So I like started with Judas Priest, and then I did some Dio, you know, and I found those pictures, and then I went on the internet looking for skulls and stuff. And I took a whole bunch of them to Alan. I'm like, okay, here's what I want. Here's what, you know, you do your thing, but this is what I want to kind of do. And so he laid out the graphics first, and then he goes, we'll do airbrushing one piece at a time. So I said, well, I want, no matter what, I want, you know, Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine on the front fender or the door, somewhere on the driver's side, because I'm always going to be in the slow lane somewhere. So I want all the best stuff on the driver's side. And so I go, but I don't want his head. I want like a skull for his head, but I want something so you could see that it's Tom Morello.
Yeah.
And so that's where it all started. And then you start with the hood with Judas Priest.
Yeah, it's so sick. And, you know, me being a big hip-hop fan, I mean, I do love most forms of music, including metal and rock. But I'm a huge West Coast fan, and some may forget or some may not know, but Eazy-E, rest in peace, dude, the OG with the Compton hat, he's also on the rear fender, I think, or the rear bedside.
Yeah, the drive. Yeah, that was after the photo shoot and all that, because I had some rock chips and stuff, and some bubbles here and there, and I was like, this is too much empty space right here. So while we're fixing this and filling this down here on the bottom, and then like David Bowie died and a couple other people had passed away that I wanted to put on there. So I'm like, while you're doing Eazy-E, I want to put Prince on there, Michael Jackson, because they had just died. And so I was like, I want Eazy-E, because I found a picture of Eazy-E, and I'm like, I want that on the other side, on the passenger side.
Yeah, because that's what I always wondered about that, because I studied the paint and the feature is available online. If you Google Dan's name, Toyota Xtra Cab, electric funeral, 1987 Toyota Xtra Cab pickup. But, you know, when I looked at the interior, how sick it was and all this, and I would look at it and I was like, man, maybe they just didn't shoot some of that, but now it makes sense that some of that was added after the shoot.
Yeah, I just wanted to fill it in, because I was like, the rock chips along the bottom in the orange, I couldn't match it with any kind of touch-up paint. So I'm like, I need some black airbrushing down there, so I can, if I get a chip, it'll be in the airbrushing, and someone will just think it's part of the airbrushing.
Yeah, and it was so cool, like that overhead photo of the rear bed. You know, it reminds me of like a Doug Starbuck type paint job, or even Van Diemen, where you almost have to get like a wide angle or a nice wide shot of it in down straight into the bed. You see like a little bit of the tribals, the biomechanics, all that stuff really came together well for, I mean, the guy that painted it really did an awesome job.
Yeah, he went above and beyond on every, because some days I'd be there sitting there watching him for a couple hours, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess you're done with that piece. Now we can move on. He goes, no. He goes, I got another whole day on this piece. I'm like, what? It looks good to me.
Yeah.
You know, like, I was satisfied with a lot of it, but he's like, no, it's not finished yet. So I was like, okay.
Yeah, super sick stereo in it, of course, and I always liked how you had the gauges in the center console, and then obviously the graphics flowed on the interior. It just looked really, really awesome. But I tell you what, that '87 Toyota Xtra Cab, it's great that you finished it and got it shot when it did, because, of course, the magazine goes away a couple years later. Of course, there is the resurgence coming back, but it's one of those things where, sometimes you just got to make it happen, and you definitely did. And your son was a big motivating part, it sounded like.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was going to give him that truck for graduation present, if he got A's and B's in high school. But that didn't happen, and then he came out truthfully. He's like, Dad, I couldn't take that truck from you. He goes, that's your blood, sweat, and tears right there. He goes, even if I did get A's and B's, I wouldn't want it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
What's your son's name, by the way? Give him a shout out.
His son's name's Trey.
Nice.
Yeah, he lives in Nebraska with his mom.
Okay.
But,
gotcha.
Yeah, he's doing the best he can.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, shout out to him, and that's pretty cool.
He's a good kid. He's a real good kid.
Now, before we wrap things up, people want to know, though, you hinted earlier that I think the truck, you did end up getting to a point where you were willing to let it go.
Yeah, I had it for 12 years, and I probably went to 150 some shows.
Wow.
And I had like 70 some trophies here, and with all the magazine shoots, the one from Japan, they came out and shot it.
That's right. It was in before Custom Trucks Mag, it was Truck Trends. I think it was in there.
Yeah, Truck Trends, yeah. And I don't know, I feel like I got my fulfillment with that truck. It needed a lot more, like it needed new airbags, and it had a leaky radiator, and just some little things that need to be fixed, but it was just too much of a long list to me, because I'm like, I never drove that truck dirty. I never, if I even drove it down the street to a car meet, I'd wipe the whole thing down, inside of my rims, everything, just so it pristine every time I showed it.
Yep.
And when I drove it to Bring the Noise just before the pandemic, I met a guy named John out there. He had the white, I don't know, F-bomb?
Yes. Yep.
Yes. John Byron.
Yep.
He called me up out of the blue after I went to that show, and I beat him in my best paint and best mini truck and all that. And we became really, really good friends. And out of the blue, he calls me and goes, "Hey, Dan, you want to sell your truck?" And I'm like, "You just called me at the right time." I go, "Come on and get it."
Wow.
And so
that's commendable for you.
And so he came out and with an enclosed trailer and loaded it up and drove it home. And that was probably the best thing I ever could have done for that truck, because he's gone above and beyond with it now. I mean, he's taken it all the way across the country to show it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's redone the interior. He's, he changed it to all leather, but he kept all the airbrushing and all the fiberglass and all that.
Yep.
And, I mean, everything he's done to that truck, he's redone the whole suspension, painted the frame. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better person to have bought in that truck.
Yep.
Because, I mean, if you saw it, you would never even know that, I didn't own it anymore, because he takes as good a care of it as I did.
Yeah, that's sick, and that's the tough thing. I think a lot of people we build our dreams, and I think some people go, well, man, I've been there before where I'm like, well, I don't want to sell it because I don't know if the next guy's going to keep care of it. So it's such a great feeling when somebody comes to you and goes, yo, or you've built a relationship with this person, and they said, look, hey, let me take it off your hands, and you kind of know in the back of your mind it's in good hands.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew as soon as because his truck was, his whole frame was painted on his truck, and it was pristine, so I knew that he was going to take care of it. So it's almost like he paid me to go show it for me now.
Oh, yeah.
That's the way I kind of look at it. I wasn't even sad to see it go. I was really shocked, But I think it was just because I was happy. I knew it was going to a good home.
Yep,
And
I
so
know. That's a good feeling to have. Now, I will tell people I'm going to share some of the photos. I'll probably even use some for our cover art for this episode. But for those that don't know, truckrun.net, as you know, Dan, they did a feature. Donald LeBlanc III did the photography.
Yeah.
Juan Trevino did the article. And, you know, it just shows like a truck like this. The style, it was so different than Tulo Taco. But it was so cool because, you know, getting to know you a little bit now and the things that you love with music and things like that, like you were able to come back 15 years later and go, yo, you know, I had such a good time with this other truck. Life gets in the way. You know, you had your son on the way, and that's a great thing. But, you know, you at the same time didn't give up on your dreams. Like when you and I have talked, you're like, yo, I'm not growing up anytime soon. Like this is who I am. It's in my blood.
Yep. I mean, I don't think I've gone my whole life without something custom.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
Even my Lexus that I drive now, you know, it's got to have something custom on it, you know.
Yeah, that's how you know you're a true
stock
enthusiast.
Yep.
No, that's awesome. But yeah, I'll share some of those photos. And I thought Donald LeBlanc III, like he did just a great job. Like I love, you know, seeing it there kind of on the river. Yeah, but like with the suicide door open and you see like the door panel, you know, this truck just really has. And that's why I want people to know that I'm going to share some of these photos that it's like, look, this truck really was, I mean, it deserved the cover, you know. And like I said, I thought John Mata did a great job shooting it.
Yeah, and the story he wrote too was awesome.
Yes, yeah, it was pretty cool.
And Ernie, rest in peace, had a big part of all that. You know, when my truck was under construction and it was in the 20th anniversary issue, you know, in the under construction issue.
Yeah.
Because I was hoping my truck was going to be finished for the 20th anniversary issue, because I was like, would it be awesome to be in the 10th and the 20th, you know?
Right.
You know? But at least I was still in there. Like, Ernie and John, you know, did whatever they could to get my truck at least under construction. So,
yep.
In that shoot for that. So I was like, okay, well, at least it's in the 20th anniversary as under construction. So I was happy with that.
Yeah, that was April 2008, 20th anniversary issue. And then it had, of course, Sideshow, ironically enough, because that came up. You know, Sean Dell's truck, that was on the cover for the second time in that, which was super cool. So, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I had to look in my notes here, and I had that noted. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I was like, that was cool that Sean's truck was on there, a truck that I've always admired.
Yeah, and Ernie and Mike really did a lot for the magazine. Obviously, Mike was the editor, but, you know, Ernie was so much like even Courtney, and Mike was too in a lot of ways, definitely helped me more than once, is, you know, these guys were always looking out, you know, especially with Courtney, with the lineage that you had going back to Escondido and things. And it's just crazy to think, like, you see these trucks, these little trucks cruising at, you know, Valley Parkway back in Escondido, and like, you know, let's call it the early 80s, and you know, not to date ourselves, but like all these years later, we still love this stuff, man.
Yeah, I've always told people, like, when I was at show, other people would say, aren't you afraid to drive this? And I'm like, no, this is my heroin, or this is my, you know, alcoholism.
Right.
You know, like, this is my getaway.
Yeah, it's in me.
If I was having a bad day at work, I'd come home, jump in my truck, and just go cruise it, you know, because I wanted to keep all the fluids going in it, and I would just cruise it, you know. That was like a high like no other.
Yep.
And then sitting at a light. Yeah, like sitting at a stoplight, and you see people with their phones out taking pictures, or, you know, I've even had like the Marietta police and pull me over just so they can look at my truck.
Wow, you know? the times have changed. You know, back in the day, you were having to say, "Sure, give me tickets for 100 things."
But they just pulled me over, and they're like, "Hope you don't mind. I wanted to look at your truck." I'm like, "Dude, take your time. I don't care." You know, that's why I built it. You know.
Yeah, well, I want to do a whole issue in the future about the whole cruising is not a crime, which of course that is big in the lowrider culture, as you know, but like with all those ordinances
Yeah.
and stuff, I mean, people just don't realize if you don't live in California, I mean, there's some places you're not allowed to cruise, more than one time up a
Right.
strip. So
Right.
it is kind of crazy. But the last couple things I got really quick is number one, you should give a shout out to your wife, because you and I both know how important a good wife is to let us do the things we love.
Oh yeah, definitely. My wife Christy, she went through the whole build of my last truck. She's like, at first she was like, mini trucks are stupid.
You're like, I'll
she
change
drives
your
a
mind.
she drives a big lifted Chevy 4-door, with 35s on it. And
Damn.
so she was like, yeah, so she's like, trucks are stupid, and then as my truck was getting done, she's like,
I want a mini
this
truck.
one's cool. Yeah, this one's cool. But then she was like embarrassed to ride in because everyone was always taking pictures of us when we were driving down the road.
You're
So
like, that's
she
how
was
you know we're celebrity status right now.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, she puts up with me, with that truck for a long time. So I give her credit.
Oh, yeah. Last question I think I got is I'll give you three choices. So you can either come up or tell us maybe your favorite truck run memory or your favorite Courtney or Ernie memory. Any one of those three. I figured I'll throw one out there to ask since you got probably the creative juices going in your mind.
Well, I have to say, like, After Madness or Desert Madness, when I first started mini trucking, was probably my favorite truck runs because one, they're in the summertime, and two, like those two shows would just go off so crazy, like everyone with their trucks full of, the beds full of water and girls in their swimsuits and just people just going nuts. And every time I hear an Oingo Boingo song, that's the first thing I remember because when I first went through a two-hip through their camp, they had Oingo Boingo like blasting.
That's awesome that you remember. See, time travel's possible, right? We don't need that flux capacitor.
Yeah.
You can literally transport back like through a song. That's what I do all the time. But see, even though I never got to experience that, I got to thank Brian McCormick and these guys like Courtney because they were ingrained in the culture. And like when I look back at the 80s trucking magazines and see like a guy jumping a BMX bike into the river, I go, man. Even though I wasn't there, I kind of go, I can understand what these guys are talking about right now. Like they were just out there living the life, man.
Yeah, I mean, that was one thing I looked forward to every year was going After Madness or Desert Madness. It was like Desert Madness, then it was After Madness. That's what they named it. I mean, I went to Rezo, but I don't like to be cold.
Yep.
Like, Rezo was just always way too cold, but Desert Madness was probably my favorite show of all time. But I hope someday, like when I retire, I'm hoping to retire soon, to travel across the United States and stop at every truck show that's along the way.
Dude.
Just try and time everything. That's my plan. Because my wife wants to travel when we retire, and then we're going to move to the Caribbean. I'm going to sell everything I have.
Really?
Yep, that's my goal.
Dude, that is awesome.
Because we have a rental house, and I feel like that's going to be paid off soon, to where that'll be our income and to have fun in the Caribbean.
Yeah, I've been down there a couple times on cruises, and I've joked with some of my friends. I was like, there's something about that island life, just jumping off it, get a catamaran, get you a cold drink, and even the cruise ship stuff is big because, you can make money off, if you've got a catamaran and that type of stuff. But even just the easy, what they call island life,
Yeah.
I
well, if you ever get a chance to do a sandals resort, I highly recommend spending the money for a sandals adventure.
To do it. Yeah, my friend went there on his honeymoon, but I have never made it yet.
Yep, that's what you got to do. That's where we went on our honeymoon. Went to Antigua, and that's where I really got the taste of, we got to do this.
That's awesome, man. Well,
yeah.
Dude, I can't thank you enough, Dan, for sitting down. I mean, it's cool to meet so many great people like yourself, and just the amount of contributions that you've made to the scene, whether it's just going to a show, buying a show shirt, building some cool trucks, ones that are etched in our minds, especially Tulo Taco. I tip my cap and salute you, man, and I just really appreciate you taking the time to share some of your memories with us, man.
All right, thank you.
And you have a good night, Dan, and I appreciate you, brother. Hey, so we just finished up with Dan, man. It was awesome hearing some of the history, but we've got the Booka in the house because there's always the 7 degrees of Ruben Arteaga, right? There's always a connection. But, Ruben, how you doing, man?
Oh, buddy, I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Hey, I know you've had a lot going on, and I'm glad to hear that you're out there, training, getting ready for the next leg of 2024. Man, I'm happy for you, brother.
Thank you, brother. Things have been a little rough here in the last couple of weeks, but I'm doing better. I'm still here.
Yeah, buddy. You're like Daniel LaRusso, man. You ain't quitting, man.
It's funny you say that because I've been watching Cobra Kai for the last week and a half.
It's addicting, isn't it?
It is, and you know what? I'm always late to the party, but hey, man, I'm here.
Yeah, I always there's a little cheesiness to it, but it's the perfect cheese for the 80s and nostalgia.
Yeah, no kidding. And you know what? I can't believe that they actually made it work. It's actually, it caught me. It got me. I think the last thing that I ever watched like that was Dexter. And, I love shows that'll kind of like grab me and want to watch it. And that's where I'm kind of at with it.
Yes, 100%. Well, we're glad that you're here. And what was ironic is, you and I kind of chatting last couple of weeks or so, you go, hey, I've got some intel on that photo shoot. But, a lot of the listeners just kind of heard from Dan and some of his recollections and whatnot. But do you remember when Gendro built the Tacoma, right, the Xtra Cab? Do you remember that era and what was the connection maybe that you had to it?
I remember that era well. I remember that truck very well. Because, little side note here, at the time, I'd sold my Xtra Cab and I was working on that white 89 that I had, and kind of like on the, back of my mind, I was looking at an Xtra Cab Tacoma. It was that first generation that came out. And Dan's truck, I always liked that truck. I remember seeing it out and seeing it shows. And I remember when Gendro was working on it. And I had my eye on one. And I never did pull that trigger, but his was definitely inspiring, to go that route. And like I was telling you, I was actually there the day of that photo shoot.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, and to your point, the Tacoma, I believe the Toyota guys will have to keep me in check here. 95, that body style comes out, it becomes a hit amongst mini truckers. What do you remember about that connection that you had that day?
So at that point in time, I was working for a chemical company, and I was also freelancing for Mini Truck on the side. And I believe it was on a Friday. That particular Friday, I had Mike's turbo truck over at Toy Sport, and we were doing tech on it.
Oh.
And I had spent like all day there, no lunch, nothing. And I made it back to the offices about 5 o'clock, end of the day. And I was tired. I was spent. I was hungry. And Mike was telling me, he goes, yeah, I'm going to go shoot this truck. You should come with me. I help out. So I did. And I remember getting up. I believe it was like somewhere up in Anaheim Hills, and where that photo was actually taken, where the truck was shot at, was, if I remember right, there was a pretty nice neighborhood and real nice expensive homes, and there was this empty lot, and that's where it got parked, and that's where it got featured at.
Yeah, so it was almost the infancy of when a developer comes in and buys the land. What did it have that feel? Because I remember talking, about Steel Flame and kind of some of that area. Everything's much more developed 25 years later, but did it feel like it was almost like a residential spot?
It did. There were homes on either side of that lot, and the picture makes it look like it's in the middle of nowhere, but no, it was like in a developing neighborhood.
That's so awesome, isn't it, man?
Yeah.
And you probably remember when Charles was like, yo, man, you want to go? And you're thinking, man, I haven't had lunch, man. Like, I just want to get some AC and do that. Do you remember, like, was it a long trip where you had to go? You kind of hinted at it, but it was like, 30-minute drive or something?
It was, where McMullen and Argus Publishing was at the time. to where that location may be 10, 15 minutes at that. And I'm talking in traffic and Friday, evening traffic.
Yeah, and very interesting. And what was something that I hit on with Dan was, his feature, the Tacoma we're talking about, of course. Now, for those that don't remember, that truck ran on September 98 issue 81, and the feature starts, Courtney wrote it, rest in peace, he says, way back in 1982, Dan got his first taste of mini trucker lifestyle. His sister was dating a guy from a club, Too Hip, and they decided it was time to treat young Dan to his first mini truck. But what was crazy to me was that a lot of people, maybe even to this day, and I talked to Gendro about this before, that there was an assumption like there was Gendro's truck, but it was because, they did all of that work on it. But, I wanted, me, I want people to get the credit. Of course, Dan's name's in the feature. He's the owner of the truck. But, we wanted to make sure that people knew that, hey, it was Dan's truck.
Right. And, Gendro's been a part of so many builds, so many awesome builds and stuff. And, yeah, sometimes you're like, wow, I wonder if that's his or it's a customer's,
Yep. Yeah, because it kind of had that vibe. And when that issue came out, so we're literally talking 25 years ago, it was kind of collateral damage because it was this hot truck. You and I talked about some of the color, before we were recording. And really, at the end of the day, it was a cover truck. It just was the 10th anniversary ran, and they said, you know what? Ballistic gets on there a second time, right? Sky Body and some of those. But really, at the end of the day, you and I both know it's a cover truck.
Of course, it is a cover truck. And, it's kind of, like you and I have talked about in the past, it's kind of, I don't know, there had been times where stuff gets kind of pushed around because of certain things or whatnot. And then there's other times where, the truck that you least expect is a cover truck, and the one that deserved it for some odd reasoning that we don't know, they get pulled into a feature. But nevertheless, I'm glad that truck got its day in the sun.
Yeah, 100%. And I can't forget it was Ballistic, Last Look, which was the second appearance for both of those trucks, and then of course Sky Body, which was kind of cool because it wasn't on the cover. But we've told that story with Mike Collins, and of course it does end up on the 10th anniversary issue. It is crazy how time flies, and I talked a little bit with Dan about this, but the ironic thing was, as iconic as that truck was, and we have some footage that, as we've shared in the past. Your truck was also at that show where Steve was at, and I recently shared some of your white Toyota footage, but I'll say this, the crazy thing was, the truck goes on to get sold, it goes to Brandt, and then it lives on kind of a whole nother, I want to say life. It lives on a whole nother kind of realm of, a truck that ends up getting in an accident and then getting repainted.
Right. And, it's funny how those things work out. Some trucks are around here forever, and then others, it's like, gee, I wonder whatever happened to it, and I guess that truck was one of the luckier ones.
Oh, yeah. Tulo Taco, of course, we're talking about, and of course, Courtney also says, the subtitle was Texas and SoCal customizers team up to create one of the baddest Tacomas anywhere. Of course, got to give a huge shout out to Rob Rodell. He also chimed in on the Facebook post, as you did, as well as Gendro. And I know he was also in the loop. Those guys down in Escondido were all teaming up, ripping out the Sawzall blades and doing the dang thing, which I thought was pretty neat. Do you think back? And, oftentimes I heard this the other day, someone had made a statement and they said in the 90s we were kind of living in the moment, right? We didn't document every single thing. We didn't have phones. We were lucky to have a pager. Do you sometimes, especially recanting some of these stories with the podcast, do you think back and go, man, I was at a lot of different shoots. I was at some cool stuff, man.
Jay, you and I have talked about this again before, and I guess I was very fortunate to be around, around certain people and be there to witness some of this. And, to your point, I mean, we didn't have cell phones. Or actually, you know what? I did have a cell phone, but it didn't take pictures.
Right.
It was it was pretty much the size of a shoebox, and I did my best whenever I would go places. I'd either take a 35 millimeter camera, or I would have the little disposable ones, and I got pictures. I have pictures from just random stuff from back in the day, and yeah, man, I kind of wish we would have had the technology there to because of course if everyone had a cell phone, then pictures would have been all over the place. But it's kind of one of those things where I'm on the fence about. It's like I'm glad we didn't, but I wish we did. Because not only is it going to take pictures of all the cool stuff, but it's also going to take pictures of all the stupid shit we were doing. So,
right.
With that being said, yeah, no, I do consider myself lucky, to be around them.
Yeah, it is kind of cool when you think back. They just had a 90s convention in Tampa, and I didn't end up going, but I read that's where I think someone was quoted was saying, yeah, in the 90s, we kind of, lived in the moment, right? We weren't documenting every single thing. Like now, you go to the Grand Canyon, you want to take a selfie, you want to kind of post up and, show your friends, hey, I'm doing some cool stuff. And, documenting, and it may be like even with Jacob, he might look back one day and go, oh yeah, Dad. Or how Facebook is now, how it reminds you like 7 years ago, this is what you were doing. I mean, it kind of reinforces how quick time goes.
No, it truly does. And I mean, there's stuff that pops up on my Facebook memories from like 10, 11 years ago. Mm-hmm. And honestly, it's just crazy because, we're that generation where, we remember life before cell phones, life before the internet. And now it's like, you try to explain that to, my kid, Jacob, and like, what do you mean no internet? How'd you watch TV? It turns into one of, it turns into one of those conversations like, oh, back in my day, but yeah, it's kind of funny how we've progressed. But, we were living in the moment, and we were, I believe we were living in a much simpler time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I didn't talk a lot about when I got to go to Rob Van Winkle's house. Everyone knows him as, of course, Vanilla Ice. I got to tip my cap to the big homie Tom for kind of making all that happen. But here's the ironic thing. When I was there, I had a couple quick conversations with Rob. And, he was born, believe it or not, on October 31st, 1967. So he's 55. And he was talking about how, he goes, if you think about it, the 90s generation was kind of like the last generation without like computers to a certain extent. And you could slice and dice it and go, well, there were computers, but most people didn't have a home computer even, which is kind of hard to believe. And even phones and all that. And I kind of got what he was saying because, right, I mean, some of us I consider myself like an 80s baby because I was born in 78, but I was kind of like a 90s kid, right? I'm a teenager and, when Snoop's album comes out and all that. But I say all that because when you really do think back, a good amount of our years were in the 90s. And we did live, I mean, we were, like the CD player was like one of the most technologically advanced things that we had, if you think about it.
Right, and I was born in '68, so I'm close to Rob's age, and I remember a lot of the 1970s. Growing up as a kid in the '70s, and it was funny. I was having this conversation with someone the other night, and we were talking about the bicentennial, 1976.
Oh, right.
I remember all the hype coming up to that. And granted, I was a little kid. I really didn't understand it. But you know what? In a couple of years here, we're going to be celebrating 250 years.
I thought about that a couple of years ago. I really did because, 1776, right? So the bicentennial was 200 years later. And I thought about it because I was like, well, 1776. And then, you get to, because, we're almost 250 now, I think. Yeah, it's going to be in 2026.
Right, and I remember all that, and then I remember I growing up in the 80s, I was a teenager in the 80s, in the late 80s. And, I remember the school had like my junior high had one computer, and like every kid got like 10 minutes or a half hour or whatever to be on it. And granted, I mean, it's nothing like the computers today. And, it was cool for the time and whatnot. But, yeah, I remember, payphones. You needed to make a call. You had to go to the payphone. I remember having a pager. I was working for this company, and I was on call 24/7, 7 days a week, and had a pager. Yep. And if I needed to make a call, I had to stop at a payphone and call the office or call whoever I was working with at the moment and whatever. And that was pre. I believe that company, we did have cell phones. So if you were out on a job kind of far away, you got to take one with you. But it was like, if you make sure you don't go over like, a couple minutes each call because it's super expensive. And, and here we are today, Here I'm on my iPhone talking to you on your iPhone,
right.
Coast to coast.
Yeah.
You would never dream that. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like, in a sense, we were living in the dark ages, but then again, during that time, we were current with our technology.
Well, here's a throwback for you. Paging someone 911. What did that mean, dude?
Emergency.
Yeah,
emergency.
Dude. Yeah, and then remember, there were certain Hank Norris. The word was he would page like typically females, and he would always do like a code 5318008. And it took me a minute, but then I realized, that what that spells upside down, like the BOOBIES. That was like his code word for like, hey, come over to my house. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It was crazy. I mean, it was crazy. I remember, and I know I've said this to you before. My first cell phone was this like little Motorola type deal, and didn't even have a clock on it.
Right.
And you would. I remember if you were one city over from where I lived, I was roaming. Let alone if I had to make a call on it, it was like, talk really fast and hang up. It was like, I didn't want to spend a lot of money on minutes.
Right.
But yeah, dude, it was a trip.
Yeah, and here's one from memory lane. I started in the cellular industry in 97, and back in those days, there was a lot of the C word, cloning. And believe it or not, you think about the scams today on Instagram, and I'll sell you parts, and Venmo me money, and all that stuff. Scams have been going on since the beginning of time. Well, there was ways for people to clone phones, and they used to have this thing where, like, if you travel to a certain city like Atlanta, that was like a high cloning area, so you'd have to do this like special code you'd have to put on your phone that authenticated with the network. And to your point, it was almost like you were going out of town, you had to let your cell phone company know because they weren't going to let the calls go through because it was so expensive back then,
Right. And I want to say I had to do that once when I went to Vegas with it.
Yep.
Just to let them know I was going out of my area, and that was me. So yeah, I did that.
So here's one more throwback before we start to wrap it up. Talking with Ruben Arteaga. And by the way, this segment is brought to you by C1500 Nonsense. Don't have nonsense, and follow C1500 Nonsense, right, on Instagram and Facebook.
That's right, for all your OBS nonsense.
Yeah, I love it. C1500 Nonsense all together. But here's the throwback I wanted to give you is 25 years ago today, at the time of this recording. Now, granted, it was a 3-day run. September 98. September 18th, 19th, and 20th, you had Endless Summer River Run, dude. And I'm sure you went to some Endless Summers over the course of time.
You know what? And I was at that show. I actually drove my my white Toyota out there with the big motor and the carburetors and all that. And gas wasn't cheap. Believe it or not, for a little compact truck, I spent a lot of money in gas getting up there and coming home. And yeah, I was there.
So sick. We have kind of a little bit of insight into this show that some others don't. Of course, I never attended, so I got to clear the air on that. But because of Steve Nielsen and that famous VHS tape that he shipped me 20 plus years ago. You can go on Instagram and type in or tap on the hashtag Endless Summer 1998 all together, of course. And there's a few posts. It's amazing to me to look at some of the trucks that were there with like Forever Low, a Sideshow, the Tuck Lugs, the Isuzu from the Space Cab that was on the cover. I think Courtney, someone had told me Courtney had painted all of the background stuff that hung up the purple around it. That was in Art of Noise, right? And you even had the Nissan extended cab with the topper that had the graphics. Like, you had a lot of cover trucks, but you think back to that 90s era. Oftentimes I say the golden era of Mini Truckin, a lot of good history, and you just go, wow, man. Literally, if you weren't walking around with a VHS on your shoulder, you don't have the footage of it. I mean, you got some photos here and there, but that was it.
Yeah, and I do have an 8mm tape that I actually let Radar have it for he was looking for content for the follow-up on the DVD, and I told him, hey, I have all this, I'm going to send it to you. And I know he still got it, I know it's safe with him and whatnot, but he was gonna copy it, and I don't know if he was ever going to use any of it, but he has it, and it's like gonna say maybe 10-15 hours of just random stuff.
Dude.
From going back from 90, I don't know, maybe 93, 94, all the way to about 98, maybe 99.
And you said Radar has it, right? I think.
Yeah, Radar has it.
I remember you told me about that.
Yeah, and I and it was just random. It was this tape that I had with my Sony camera, and wherever I would go, I would take it with me, and I would walk around the show, take take video of the clubs that were there and whatnot, or the stuff I found interesting, and and like I said, I know it's safe with him and stuff, and hopefully there comes a point in time where he does use it.
Yeah, I know he's hinted to me some things that he has, planned that he wants to accomplish. And obviously, with them now having Lone Star Throwdown, a classic truck throwdown, and then the Garage Gear Clothing taking the lion's share of their time, but certainly, and that's the cool thing. And I got to give a shout out. There's some guys, and I always credit them, that have reached out to me to say, hey, I'm going to send you some gold. And they just want to get it out there, right? And I was posting a lot of the old school stuff, and I kind of backed away a little bit, just to kind of keep it mixed up. I don't want everyone to think, hey, that's all I post. But to your point, it wasn't just, even though I was joking earlier, it wasn't just a video camera on your shoulder. You did start to have, in the mid to late 90s, the smaller camcorders, the DV tapes. And then before those, you had the fatter, smaller VHS ones, not the big full tape.
Right.
So,
No, this was like a little Sony Cam 8mm.
Yes.
And like I said, I mean, we bought it just to, have and take videos of, family functions and whatnot. But, I would take that along with, either a throwaway camera or my 35mm. I would take it with me just to take, random pictures, It was a lot more effort back then than it is today, because, I mean, you see something cool, you reach in your pocket, you take your phone out and video or a picture. But back then, man, you had to be committed and wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very good point, man. But like I said, I'm glad things are going well. It's always fun to have a little bit of trip down memory lane, where we dabble in it, but we don't go too far down the bunny trail where people are like, I don't want to hear these old guys talk about this and that. I'm speaking for myself, by the way. But the cool thing is, we can tap into it, every few episodes. And, Miggity Mike the Mayor, even though he's out gallivanting, he sometimes listens, I heard, Ruben.
Sometimes.
Everything else good in your neck of the woods, though, all things considered?
Yeah, everything's great. Weather here is starting to cool down a little bit, so it's not as hot, it's not as warm. We're busy at the shop, like always, and my life is good.
This morning, I had to go downtown for some work, and I came down the elevator, and the door opened, and I was like, wow, like, where am I at? Because it was overcast downtown, and there was no humidity. And I was like, oh, my God, is the F word coming, right? Fall. And then all of a sudden I look at my phone and I was like, man, it's only going to be a high of 87 today. And man, it was so awesome. Now, granted, it's not here to stay for long, I'm sure,
Right.
but we'll see.
Yeah, like today, I looked at my phone on the weather and stuff, and I think we had a high of 79 or 80, something like that. I mean, I don't think we were going to break 80. And usually weather like this doesn't happen until about the first or second week of November, right when we're coming back from SEMA. But who knows what the weather's like. I mean, how a month ago we had a hurricane come through here. So, just goes to show you.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of SEMA, I will tell everyone that Randy's truck is ready to rock and roll. Randy has shared that with everyone. It's going to be out there. There's going to be some more big news. And speaking of nostalgia, the last thing I'll say is, we got a chance recently to share, thanks to other folks, the ballistic, the orange version, which a lot of people never saw back in '93. And, that truck, we've talked about the existence of it and what happened with it. But it is so cool to see, and a tip of the cap, I talked to Randy recently, and this, Ruben. I mean, he's just on this unbelievable run. He had this preview in Custom Trucks Mag in Japan. Then he has the feature. There's no secret. Brandon Burrell has shot it. So, again, more coming on that. But, man, to have another Mini at SEMA is going to be cool. And I just hope, I know I don't get a chance to talk to Pat very often, but, I think Pat knows, like, wow, dude, what a legacy he's left. And it was so great to have him on. And I know you've helped us so often get guys on, including Pat. But the legacy that he left that has etched in our minds is just unreal, man.
Yeah, it's totally unreal because Randy knocked it out of the park with that truck. I mean, that truck is beautiful, and I can't wait to see it in Vegas. But yeah, Pat has definitely made an impression on the scene with that truck. And back then, I mean, speaking for myself, I mean, I never thought that any of the stuff we were going to do would last, 5 years, let alone 30 plus. And it's just incredible. It's just way incredible. And this whole little journey that I've taken, I mean, it's been, I'll say it, it's been my life. It's made me money. It's what I do every day. And as a kid, we weren't thinking that. We were just, doing what we thought was cool, and wanted something cool to cruise around with, and go hang out with our friends and whatnot.
Oh yeah. It sounds like out on the woo. He started on YouTube and didn't even know he could make money, and then now he's a bigger personality on there, and it's so cool to see. But dude, Ruben Arteaga, the Booka, thanks so much for all the support, man. Been in this game, this scene, if you will, a very long time. Always take a few minutes to thank the guys that came before us, like the Rubens and so many others out there. But certainly appreciate it. Can't wait to hang out, and hopefully that'll be soon.
No worries, brother, and I hope to see you in Vegas.
No doubt, brother. I'm trying to make it happen, and it's going to be going down for real. I hope everyone has a great weekend. We ran this audio after Dan's, not to spoil anything in terms of some of the insight. And Ruben, be safe, brother, and stay on the motherfucking rise.
We out.